Welcome to episode 48 of the Coast to Coast AFL podcast with Dick and Blaze. This week, we catch up on the community matches that happened over the past weekend and a couple of days prior, and we do a lead up into the 2025 official start of the season and round zero, which, we still have opinions about. But without further ado,
unofficial lead up to the unofficial start of the season.
Very true, very true. But without further ado, how are you doing, Mr. Psyrick?
Not too bad, not too bad. Bit of a quieter week this one, which just meant I watched more preseason than I thought I would. But otherwise, you know what? Just sort of doing a couple of things, catching up with family. Also watched the Perth Wildcats. Get a come from behind win on Saturday. Well, there was actually a fire nearby, actually. There was, unfortunately, normally in the Perth Hills, we get a few bushfire risks. It hadn't happened all season, but it had a small one, but they contained it, so
That's good.
It was one of those things where I was like, watching the Wildcats, at the start I was like, yeah, I wouldn't mind to evacuate, they were getting dumped on, and then they came back, and I'm like, geez, I'm lucky I didn't have to run away for my life. Watching the basketball seemed much more fun.
Well,
So,
I don't know, would have been a bad way to go. Not watching the better sport.
yeah. So, yeah, no, it's been a good week for me. How about you?
It's been busy. Saturday night I saw Green Day live at
Oh
Marvel
yeah.
Stadium, which was pretty cool. Um, they played the entirety of their album Dookie and American Idiot, because
Oh.
it's the 30th anniversary of Dookie and the 20th anniversary of American Idiot. So they played both those albums in their entirety, which was pretty cool. Otherwise, it hasn't been much. I came back as you know. I went to Queensland, the weekend before of last week's podcast, and I just gotten back as we recorded said podcast. So that was pretty much like the highlight of the week last week, really. Otherwise, it's just been work. This week's pretty much the same, just a lot of work. And working on a couple of productions for a big thing coming up in a couple of weeks, which hasn't. The thing is officially announced, but I'm not officially announced to be a part of it just yet. So I have to keep that technically under wraps. But otherwise, yeah, just a lot of chilling, just a lot of vibing, more streaming. That's about it.
Awesome. I'll tell you what, you chose a much better week to head up to Queensland because, yeah, maybe looking a bit rough there in the not too distant future as we approach round zero.
Yeah, we'll touch on that when we get to our brief little overview of the round ahead, because that cyclone does not look like it's going to be very friendly to the AFL this week.
Wait and see. I'm running short odds on it actually getting announced what's going to happen while we do this podcast episode.
Yeah, just keep a close eye on the news. So we'll see what happens. But without further ado, let us jump in to the rundowns of the AAMI Community Matches, as they are called, in this year's off season, I should say. Starting with Geelong and Essendon.
Yeah, so we're actually going to break this one down a tiny bit more. We're going to cover all matches in the preseason, but we thought we would shape this one up a bit to how we're, a bit of a practice match for us to do the rundowns again, change a few things up,
Yeah,
try to simplify it.
that and
So,
yeah, as we've kind of talked about over the past couple of weeks, we've slightly changing up how we do our breakdowns now. So we're doing each game kind of together rather than doing them all each separately, because it just kind of flows better because we have separate
teamwork makes
styles
the
of note
dream work.
taking as well. Exactly.
Yeah.
Um, so if this all works out, if this one game works out, then we're definitely going to be happy with continuing it. But let's find out.
All hinges on this.
Shall you begin?
I'll tell you what. Tell you what though, for a preseason match, as you all know, I never get that excited about the preseason. But this was by far the most entertaining one and probably the most exciting one if you're an Essendon fan, as they will be keen on the growth of the young Essendon players that featured in this match, like Caddy, Pryor, Brian, Sartses, Hobbs, and of course, preseason bolter Isaac Keiko. Picked, what was it, 12 in the draft this year. Kicked 4 goals on debut. It was a fantastic game by him. It was a very simple game plan. Both teams were willing to give up a bit of control of the play, to go a bit more aggressively.
Mm-hmm.
The Dons with more aggressive handball chains, I should say. While the Cats sort of focused more on ground ball and back half ball movement. They were trying to get the interceptions and bring the ball into their forward half. But the Dons, even though they did turn the ball over a bit, were overall sort of, just did enough. Sort of a bit like last year, They got the ball in their forward line just enough to kick enough points to get over the line, especially with their efficiency as well. Kicking 17-2 really helped that cause. Sort of a back and forth night. As I said, the forward half pressure acts for the Dons were a very big feature of their game.
Mm-hmm.
Again, their transition got a lot of turnovers, but they got the better of the looks. So even if players like Jack Henry or Tom Stewart were mopping it up in their back line, they were under pressure almost immediately. So they were able to just pile on basically in the forward half pressure. In terms of position setting into opening round, as said, it seems like Dylan Shield will do a Heppel-like roll-off halfback. He was solid, had a few uncontested clangers, but overall was pretty good. And Nick Martin, he was almost playing a forward wing role, was a lot more offensive there. Didn't play too much in the back half like he did last year.
Mm-hmm.
So he is looking to be a connection to power some of the young and lively Essendon forward line. For Geelong, though, Sam de Koning, Bicklaves and Neil shared ruck duties, suggesting Stanley might be heading towards the outer for 2025.
I don't think that's too much of a surprise, considering he's also, not retirement age, veteran age, to be more specific. So could just be an age and a fitness thing as to why he's kind of being maybe pushed out a little bit more. And Geelong kind of doing something with SDK, like Carlton have been doing with his brother.
Yeah, well, it's sort of a bit, as I said, because you're right. With Petnet, it's just sort of he's been keeping it in, but he hasn't really produced much. Not strong enough metrics to warrant just going a bit more, the multi-talented versions of as I said, Tom de Koning, he can go forward and kick goals. Sam de Koning, sort of the opposite. He'll always be a pretty solid defender. So, if you don't need to play Stanley, because he doesn't offer too much around the ground,
Yeah.
They might just be looking to move away from him. But it's too early to tell as well. He still had the run in the preseason. It was a bit weird because a few of these Essendon players too played the VFL match beforehand, so they had double duties. So it's actually pretty impressive that they did run out the game, albeit with very mixed rotations.
Yeah, I mean, it is, again, because these are preseason games, the rotation is still entirely in flux as to how they want to do things just in general. And this is across every team for the most part. Some are fairly settled, but again, yeah, because they had the bigger bench to work with, some of their actual rotations aren't exactly as clean as they would normally be.
Yeah, and look, some teams brought in the 4 extras but didn't use them at all, only wanting to bring them on if injury occurred, or can't say want in that case, but you know what I mean. And some just rotated almost every player, either post halftime they brought some more players on or whatnot. So yeah, overall, this one was really exciting. It was just so good to see the pressure of Essendon's forward line, because we did mention last year that their midfield did supply the ball a lot. And while they were converting, it's when that sort of dried up a bit, the pure conversion, they looked a bit anemic. So although it's only preseason, it was very good to see, especially Keiko, I think one of the best things was seeing his run off the ball too. You could tell that he was just as keen to lay a tackle as he was to try and nab the ball in that forward 50 line.
His inspirations have got to be the indigenous um what's the word that I'm looking for? The Indigenous pressure forwards of even of the current
Yeah,
era and of
yeah,
the past. Like you got your Riolis and your Bolton in this
yeah,
case, Michael
Cameron
Walters,
or
Cameron.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, so as I said, he's definitely that mix. Like, he's definitely always looking to create an opportunity, but is defensively solid enough. He may because there were a few handball chains where he missed the mark and all that sort of stuff, but like he just had that good aggressive mindset,
Mm,
and it may say that Essendon might be a bit like that this year. Like they know where they're at, playing all the kids and all that, but they're going to be like, well, we're not going to go in our shell. We're going to attack. We're going to try and generate as much score as possible, and that actually might be the best way for them to go because, again, their defense is still okay. A lot better than last year on
mm.
paper. But yeah, as I said, they're gonna be relying a lot of their forward half work to actually generate a lot of wins this year, or at least enough.
Yeah, 100%. Well, speaking of Keiko, that's the first player that I want to highlight. Key signing in the 2024 draft. He outshined his initial expectations, kicking 4 goals from 14 disposals, 9 of them effective. 6 contested possessions, 4 marks, with one of them being a mark inside 50. 2 inside 50s, 2 goal assists, 6 score involvements, 5 ground ball gets, and 4 of those in forward 50. So again, yeah, it's just an overall very solid performance by him, and definitely is part of the massive future that Essendon have lined up. Provided this whole Essendon edge actually works out this time. Next on my list.
Like the media, Blazer, you're too focused on the where. I know that.
Hey,
It
look,
is funny.
the as much as Essendon want to try and live in the now, they're always thinking about the future.
Yeah, it's always a thing. Anyway, talking about the future.
Talking about the future, Nick Martin is part of their future too. He shifted into a wingman role for this game and played much more offensively, kicking 2 goals from 22 disposals, 17 of them effective, 4 contested possessions, 3 intercepts, 11 marks, 5 inside 50, 6 score involvements, 17 pressure acts. As you said, he was overall pretty solid wing performance. It's the sort of performance that you expect from wingman players, just kind of overall
Hmm.
anyway. Like you look at D'Ambrosio at Hawthorn, and he's playing the role that he was, he should have been playing at Essendon. And
Yeah, and so just like awkwardly. Well, yeah, I don't know. Essendon like bringing people into that half back line. Um, but yeah, as I said, it's just yeah, I just can't really see them getting much back half movement this year, even
no,
with a few more improvements.
yeah, I think Martin being on the wing is actually like a stronger
It
benefit to
just
them.
it's where it's going to do the most damage.
It'll just be a question then of where does Dersma go on the other wing, or does he play a different role when he comes back?
Yeah, well, honestly, he might not be 100% selection material. He was a bit average,
Oh yeah, he was a bit
all
average
things
last year,
considered.
but
Well, no, yeah, I mean, just in this preseason match, but last year was a bit injury affected. But yeah, he wasn't the best. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
yeah. And then the last player that I want to highlight, another player that you did also mention, was Elijah Satis. Former number 5 draft pick, was dominant in the midfield, finishing with 31 touches, 22 of them effective, 13 contested possessions, 5 inside 50s, 10 clearances, 6 score involvements, 19 pressure acts, 9 grab ball gets, and 516 meters gained. Really solid ball mover through that middle.
Yeah, and I'm gonna put as quick disclosure warning. If you're playing fantasy, I wouldn't pick Elijah Sartis because a lot of people are pretty keen on him, seeing him go through the middle. Unfortunately, he's still 20. He's still a bit slightly. He'll be put in the forward line when he's not in the midfield. So that will make him,
Yeah, that'll
not quite as
make his
good an
points a little bit
outlook as he
lower.
looked in the. Yeah. But in the preseason, guy, you got to be excited about his future. Like, I reckon it'll be like a 40% CBA, attendance for the year maybe for Essendon. So, you know what? It would just help them become more consistent in the clearances because we
Mm.
saw them pretty good. But yeah, as I said, they're very reliant on Zach Merritt. So any centre bounce or stoppages that doesn't have Merritt, we can see players like Elijah Sarsis fill in that role, provide a bit more variation for them.
Yeah, and like even if it's like a situation where Merrick goes to the bench, like Sartis can just fill that space until he comes back on and just continue
Mm,
with that kind of rotation. I think that would work out for them for the most part.
yeah.
All right, moving on to a couple of players I wanted to highlight for Geelong. Star Jeremy Cameron, he's always doing good things up in the forward line, and this week was
Mm.
no different. He kicked 2-2 from 23 touches, 15 of them effective, 5 contested possessions, 11 marks with 4 of them inside 50, 4 inside 50, 7 score involvements, and 5 ground ball gets. Just usual Jeremy Cameron stuff.
Yeah, I thought it was a bit weird because I thought Geelong might actually look for a few more other avenues considering it was a preseason game. Graham Myers took a lot of marks, especially near the forward 50, but um, yeah, it's like I would have thought Dempsey or, maybe even like what's his name, tall guy, Shannon Neal might
Yeah, I was
get
gonna say
targeted a
you'd think
bit
Shannon
more.
Neal would have like kind of been the spearhead up
And he's
forward
still
for a
be
bit.
good, but you know what I mean? But, maybe they just trust in their process enough to where they're just going, yeah, let's play a complete normal game. So,
Well, Geelong can do that
it's,
because of the fact that they have such a low injury list as well.
yeah, exactly. So, you know, like I said, just a bit surprised. I would like some of the younger kids getting more of a look because, again, touch wood, but if Cameron did go down, it does shape a lot of their season. But that's the way they looked. And yeah, the Cats offense looked okay, you know. No real worries there.
Yeah, agreed. Jack Bowes is a hard runner through Geelong's midfield, kicking a goal from 31 disposals, 22 of them 22 of them effective, 12 contested possessions, 5 marks, 6 inside 50s, 5 clearances, 5 score involvements, 8 pressure acts, and 721 meters gained. I believe he was one of the highest runners in the entire round, which is very solid. It's what is expected from a lot of Geelong's midfield as well as a lot of hard running and a lot of hard,
Yeah,
ball
well,
movement.
yeah, so Jack Bowes is just one of those players where, again, essential midfielder. It's just more run where required sort of thing.
Mm.
He's a bit more of their link up player when it comes to their movement because a lot of their inside midfielders, especially as we see Patrick Dangerfield get closer and closer to goal, you know what I mean? Um, they got other players like Atkins, who is more of a clearance sort of person. So for someone like Jack Bowes to get that link up, he'll be important. Even though he's not the best Geelong player, he's very important for the
Mm.
way that they go from defence to forward line.
Yeah, agreed. And then Jack Henry, who was very important down in defence. He secured 13 intercepts from 18 disposals, 14 of them effective, 7 contested possessions, 6 marks with 5 intercept marks, 4 1%ers, and 4 spoils.
Yeah, and again, that wasn't that defensively solid for Geelong. Again, hard to tell in the preseason because a few things came a bit easier than you had thought for Essendon. So, but yeah, Jack Henry, he was pretty fantastic. I think he's actually, I wouldn't say an underrated defender, but considering his age and the fact that his brother gets a lot more of the limelight, he could be an important piece for a fair while.
Yeah, I
He's not
agree.
just a list filler.
Yeah, I think he could work his way into like a more consistent 22 position, especially as, players either get injured or retire,
Pretty
etc., etc.
consistent 22. I think it's more just you start putting him as like I wouldn't say like the best, but you know what I mean? Like of the core group of young defenders, Jack Henry would be like top 6 at least.
Oh, 100%. 100%. But yeah, it's just about, making sure you have that core, and maybe he just becomes part of that core at this point if he's putting up solid performances.
I mean, it's typical Geelong, just like, oh yeah, backline's aging. Oh, let's just recruit people out of nowhere again. I don't think he was that high a draft pick.
No, he wasn't. I don't think.
Yeah.
All right,
Actually, which one came from Hollywood? Was that the other Henry?
that might have been the other Henry. I can't remember.
Yeah. Anyway.
Anyway, let's move on to the game with the scoreline that I very much expected, but I also wasn't expecting it to play out the way that it did.
Hmm.
Richmond and Collingwood for the annual Charity Shield match.
Yeah, well, there wasn't too much charity given by Collingwood, that's for sure. Yeah, they were just flying by, far more efficient Collingwood. Although Richmond had gotten off of the pill, stats-wise, there's a few games like this. They were fairly equal. I think they even got more inside 50s than
We
Collingwood.
had more
Uh,
inside 50s, and I think we had more clearances as well. Like,
yeah.
sorry to kind of interject, is the fact that I
No,
was
no.
boots on the ground. I did take
Yep.
photos. I do not have the photos ready to show on the YouTube video. I apologize for that. It is up on the socials though, I think. If not, I'll properly upload them maybe later in the week. Um, but no, what I saw through that midfield was more than what I was expecting. I think our midfield, for the most part, actually like competed very well. I think we outclassed them in a couple of spots here and there.
Mm,
We really struggled to convert up forward, which will, as you'll see with a couple of other games, happened to a lot of teams. Um,
yeah.
and yeah,
And I was
when
going
it
to
came to
say,
defense, they were Collingwood were extremely accurate for one, and two, they were able to beat us in the air by a fair bit.
yeah, and I was about to say that back half transition, especially when comparing it to last week, because again, I think sometimes people just only remember the last game they watch because Collingwood looked pretty mediocre on back half transition. Where this week,
They
I
were
just seen night and day.
so much better.
Dan Houston was very positive for them. Harry Perryman, although he played a bit inside, again, he's just one of those players that gets involved. Um, so he had a pretty good game. And of course, not Nick Dacos, who was fantastic anyway. You'll talk about his praises, I'm
Unfortunately,
sure. But his brother Josh Dacos off halfback, he was so he was still very clean.
mm-hmm.
Was still having a lot of positive forward impact, at least from the I must admit, only a tiny bit that I watched of this game. I think I watched a quarter and decided enough was enough. But yeah, as I said, um, yeah. The only other thing I really got to say is that thankfully there was no major injuries in this match. Collingwood play round 0 and Richmond play round 1.
Yes, that is exactly right. With Collingwood playing GWS. Is that how they play this week?
Yes.
Yes, that's right. And then Richmond obviously playing the traditional round one opener against
Mm-hmm.
Carlton, which I will be at. I will be there. I will be
Yes.
boots on ground once more. All right.
Boots on
So
ground.
individual performances. For my first point, I'm going to talk about three players at once, being Brody Myercheck, Bobby Hill, and Tim Membry, because they each kicked 4 goals, completely outscoring Richmond on their own. Because Richmond kicked 6-13, which would equate to basically 8-1, and they kicked 12 goals between them. So do the math.
Yeah, I
But
should say their forward line in general looked rejuvenated.
they
That's
did.
the other point I forgot to mention.
Agreed. I think Membry offers a lot to that forward line, especially when you have a player like DeGoey and Elliott who are either like in and out with injury for one, and obviously,
Mhm.
sorry, and also I should say doing midfield time as well as forward time. And then just a quick note on Hill as well. He had 100% time on ground, 9 score involvements, and 10 pressure acts. The Myercheck and Membry stats were a little bit lower, so that's why I didn't really mention them too much. But Bobby Hill, former Norm Smith medalist as well, looks pretty good. Next, Nick Dacos, having recovered from plantar fasciitis, it looked to be in stellar form, although he finished his game in the middle of the third quarter. So he didn't play out the entire game. I think that's just precautionary. But he finished with 32 touches, with 26 of them effective, 10 contested possessions, 5 marks. No, I did actually spell it correctly. I checked it. It is 2
Yeah,
eyes.
no, I was checking. I was, yeah.
I was like, what are you doing? I was, no, I'm pretty sure that's right.
Sorry, I was curious.
No, you're good. 26 effective, 10 contested possessions, 5 marks, 4 inside 50s, 6 clearances, 4 goal assists, 11 score involvements, 8 tackles, 19 pressure acts, 7 ground ball gets, and 323 meters gained. If he's going to really contend for the Brownlow this year, he's got to keep. If he can do this in like 3 and a bit quarters, or 2 and a bit quarters, like imagine what he can do in a full game if he doesn't
Yeah,
get
I mean,
tagged.
this would have been a 40 disposal game, with he got 80% time on ground, ended up with 59. So yeah, as I said, I mean, look, again, sometimes, and we discussed this a bit before stream, these sort of preseason games tend to favor a bit more of the uncontested players.
Yeah,
Um, Or at least the ones that like to get the ground ball, the handball receive sort of things. When I say ground ball, I meant loose more than hard. But yeah, as I said, it's still amazing stat lines to be pumping out, and it suggests that he will be right in Brownlow contention. The hand injury won't be affecting him too much, hopefully. So,
Yeah. Well, in his case, hopefully not. In my case,
mm.
I mean, no one ever hopes, for a player to have an injury, but
Yeah, well,
I
especially
wouldn't,
playing off Fasciatis.
I wouldn't
It's
mind Collingwood suffering a little bit.
yeah. Also, I should say that's foot, not hand.
Yes, but it's still an important part of a player's
Yeah,
physical.
hands and feet are pretty good for football.
Absolutely. Well, it's called football for a reason and not
Yeah,
headball. I don't know.
football and it has handballs. Yeah,
And
both
then
integral parts.
lastly for Collingwood, Isaac Quaynor was a prolific defender all around the ground, finishing with 19 disposals, 17 of them effective, 8 intercepts, 11 marks with 4 intercept marks, 3 score involvements, 3 ground ball gets, and 2 spoils. He was literally every time we tried to go in forward 50, like he was there. He impacted everything. He was in the right spots at the right moments.
And that's what I was sort of saying from last year. Now that Quaynor can just focus on being a bit more defensive, they got other transition players. I think his work as a small defender is pretty good because I think sometimes that's where you can get their best work because when you're a small defender, you can get those intercepts and you can still distribute well.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like that intercept possession into the next one turns into being very important movement. As I said, as a link-up player, he still kind of turns the ball over sometimes. So,
And whilst I didn't write it as my stats here, that's kind of puts a good light on Jaden Short for an example because he pretty much played the same role in our defense that game and had very similar numbers. I think he had like 30 plus disposals off the top of my head.
yeah, a bit more pure distribution than pressure, but it's pretty big.
Well, he's back in his comfort spot of half back rather than being in the
Yeah,
midfield, so it's much more beneficial to him to be there, especially Rioli isn't there anymore.
yeah, unfortunately, but still a
Um,
solid player to slot him with.
yeah. Just to highlight a couple of Richmond players though. Jacob Blight, our 2024 mid-season recruit. I thought he was very, very good in defense and will slot in perfectly once our ACL boys are back in there, being Gibkiss and Young. He finished with 12 disposals, 10 of them effective, 4 intercepts, all of them were intercept marks, 7 marks overall, 7 1%ers, and 7 spoils. So he's definitely doing a lot from like Brody and from Floston because they're our intercept defenders as well. So that's good to see. Like I think he was in the 3 games that he played at the end of last season. I think he looked really good. It's just getting that game time into him. I believe he's actually from WA, so got a good player that we
I'll
yoinked
believe it.
from out west. I'm pretty sure he played for
Yeah,
Peel
no,
Thunder.
Jacob Light. Yeah, I did remember. Yeah, he was from West Perth, I think.
Was that the West Perth or Peel? I can't remember.
Oh, yeah, it was Peel. Sorry.
Yeah, there we go. I can't remember where our other player was from. Campbell Gray, I think it is. I know he's from WA, but I can't remember which team.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Doesn't matter.
Jacob Hopper, I thought was really good in the midfield with ball movement, collecting 31 disposals, 24 of them effective, 14 contested possessions, 5 marks, 8 clearances, a goal, 3 score involvements, 10 pressure acts, and 11 ground ball gets. Just as I said, I thought our midfield, for the most part, actually looked really, really good. And we didn't even have all of our midfield out there. Like, Brescia didn't play. Ralph Smith didn't play. So we didn't have one of our 2 best wingmen. McIntosh played more on ball rather than out ball.
Yeah, McIntosh. Yeah, I was surprised at that. Like, not really because of the experience lacking there, but I was actually surprised he seemed to do okay.
No, he's
For an old
surprised.
fella.
He's because he has that bigger body. He's surprisingly pretty good on
Yeah.
ball, so he knows how to use his weight. It's just, I think it might actually be better for him to play on ball because of his age, rather than
Yeah, and it's
him
one of those
playing
things where
wing
it's like
again.
he's like playing a prone player, like, and Richmond used to have the infrastructure to deal with some of that, but now that he turns into that inside midfielder territory, yeah, you probably want a bit more connection, but at least it fills a role for the time being. So
Yeah,
it's a pretty
and
neat
like what
transition. It looks.
when we get a player like Judson Clark, for example, back
Mm,
from his ACL injury, I think he would fit really well on the wing alongside Ralph Smith because they're both really good at
mm,
running and good distribution. So I think that would flow a lot
yeah.
better as well. And just have if you put Macca on ball alongside Prestia, alongside Taranto, alongside Hopper, I think despite it being an aging midfield, I think it's pretty strong in terms of like big bodied, be able to lay tackles and just throw themselves around.
Yeah, for sure.
And then speaking of player that likes to throw himself around, Captain Toby Nankervis I thought was really good in the rock, finishing with 28 hitouts with 8 to advantage, 22 disposals, 19 effective, 10 contested possessions, 4 marks, 7 clearances, a behind, a goal assist, 5 score involvements, 5 tackles, 18 pressure acts, and 4 ground ball gets.
Yeah, both the big men went a bit around the ground, it looks like. Darcy Cameron also slotting a goal and, you know, doing a bit as well. So, yeah, it's good to see one of the, it's very harsh calling him second tier Ruckman because they played very quality last year. But, you know, obviously with Cherry and Gorn having such great season, it makes almost everyone else
Yeah,
forced into that second
it's
tier.
crazy, and you look at most of, and as we will look at most of the rucks in the in the community matches, they all performed
Mm.
fairly well, like up against each other.
Yeah, well, except for the few ones sending kids up there to,
Yeah, except for the ones that kind of had
unfortunately
no
get
choice
nicked.
but to play the younger kids against the more
Yeah,
experienced. But
exactly. So.
anyway, that does it for the Richmond v Collingwood game. Again, I will be boots on ground for the traditional season opener against Carlton in 2 weeks. Uh,
Mhm.
no, actually, in a little over a week. Fun fact.
Yeah,
um,
it would
but
be.
until we get to that, we have plenty more games to cover, and the next one being Hawthorn versus the
I
Western
thought
Bulldogs.
Bulldogs. Yeah, this was an interesting one. I thought this was one of those games where I thought with the Western Bulldogs out, if you're playing a few more kids, I thought Hawthorn would just um, deal with them fairly well, but they actually lost 66-77. It was a relatively close game, but the Bulldogs had a lot of control too, so I was very surprised about that. I can't really say too much about Hawthorn. They just look okay. For a preseason, I'm not going to get too deep, but
Mm,
I will focus a bit on the Bulldogs because, yeah, a lot of their kids lifting up the mantle in the absence of the senior figures
mm-hmm.
was very good. Unfortunately, one of the major takeaways from this game was the injury to Bontempelli. He's looking to add to the injury list, missing a month or so of football. And yeah, as I said, the Bulldogs, they didn't get to run their middle style play. As we mentioned, they deal with a lot of clearances and forward half dominance.
Mm-hmm.
But that didn't happen because of the loss of numbers. Hawthorn got a lot of that. But honestly, the Dogs' defense coped. And Rory Lobb, I said, I wasn't going to doubt his ability to play one-on-one a bit more. But, you got to ask the question, will he adjust? And from this, I think he probably could because he was solid one-on-one, was fairly responsible for Marby Old Shoal, but could still get up the ground, intercept, either taking marks or spoils a bit forward when needed to. So, yeah, he just looked pretty switch on about knowing when to go up the ground and when not to.
Mm.
And in terms of some of the youngsters I talked about before, Mitch Cleary, Joel Freer, and James O'Donnell looked all like they were capable of playing round one. And probably the biggest surprise packet out of all of them, for some reason I didn't write it down because I'm a bit of a dummy. But I think his name was like Johnson or Sam Davidson. Sam Davidson.
He's one of
He
their
looked
recruits, wasn't he?
Yeah, he's a mature age recruit. And he was playing basically on the wing, going up the ground half forward at times, scored a goal, and especially early, he was just so involved in all of the Bulldogs' importance play. And, along with Lachlan McNeil, who you'll talk about, he had a very half a really amazing game. I think he scored 3 goals in the first half and one later on. Um, and both, yeah, they just provide a lot of connection in a pretty tentative spot being the outside ball movement for the Western Bulldogs. So I think they'll be very happy with that, how they looked in that match.
Yeah, 100%.
In terms of their smalls, in terms of Hawthorn, their small ball forward line did struggle until late. And their tall forwards, again, were pretty raw. They weren't playing Kalshadir, obviously, and they weren't playing what I would say is any other recognised tall. Like they had Max Ramsden, William McCabe got a run at it. He's a bit of a project player. But yeah, they didn't really have anyone up front. But, as I said, the Smalls unfortunately waited till the last half before they really got involved. And the final bit to note, Vandermeer got a concussion, but timing-wise, he will be cleared for round 1 as long as nothing happens. But as I said, the bot will be ruled out for a fair few.
Yeah.
Otherwise, not really much to note. Barras got a bit of time. He looked okay, but I think he was just sort of being managed. I don't actually think they played. No, they didn't play. No, Battle did play. So
Battle did play. He's in my notes.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think he did all right. But
the one thing that I'm surprised about is that they didn't really throw Hardwick forward all that much. Like, because I was talking about it with my mate at work who's a Hawthorn supporter, right? And because we saw the week prior in their unofficial preseason game, that they had both Sicily and Hardwick forward quite a lot, and worked fairly well. But in this game, it felt like they didn't really bother to try it.
Because Hardwick didn't play.
Oh, that helps me.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. I think he was rested, as part of management. Okay. I don't think he's injured.
If it's a rest, that's fine. But yeah, because you'd want to hope that if Chol is going to get, kind of pushed around pretty well by Lob, and then you don't have your other key forward in Kalshadir up, that you want to throw someone who can play tall, like Hardwick.
Yeah. Well, they did play Sicily up there late, but I just honestly think
Sicily doesn't have the height, though, is the issue. Like, he's not tall. He's tall, but he's not tall enough.
Yeah. Honestly, as I said, it was very late, and I can't remember him doing all that much in the forward line, but yeah, as I said, they definitely didn't really set up for anything interesting, so whether that was just like Sam Mitchell keeping a few cards close to his chest, because he didn't seem all that fast when Hawthorn were fairly behind at halftime. You know what I mean? It was just like, yeah, it's a bit disappointing, but we're still going to manage players. You know what I mean? Like, he still wanted to do the normal rotations. He wasn't going to change too much. So
yeah, that's fair enough.
Yeah, I think it's just I wouldn't read too much into what Hawthorn were doing. I did get the vibe that they were a bit more
conservative with their plans.
Yeah, or just, getting more about the minutes than the actual rotations. I think the Bulldogs were looking a bit more, considering the injuries that they're going to have to deal with at the start of this season. So they're looking for a bit more from a few different players. So that might be why they looked a bit more impressive.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Speaking of impressive, let's talk about a man who has been through a lot the past 12 months. Had a bit of an injury scare or health scare in the middle of last season, but has come back, looks healthy as ever. In his twilight years. This could be his last year. Who knows? Because he's 34. But Tom Liberatore looks so good. 31 disposal, but only 17 of them effective. But it was enough. 13 contested possessions, 7 marks, 6 inside 50s, 9 clearances, a behind, 2 goal assists, 7 score involvements, 10 tackles, 36 pressure acts, 11 ground ball gets, and 542 meters gained. He looked like he was playing as he was 5-6 years ago.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's sort of the opposite of what I said earlier. You know how the preseason helps some uncontested players, rack up some stats more than they probably would. Where Liberatore just looked like he was having a bit of fun running around. You know what I mean? I think he was really keen to test if his body's going right. I guess you do when you're older, but I'll tell you what, if I was Bevo, I would be like, yeah, that's great. But also, crossing your fingers,
Yeah, don't push
sort
yourself
of
too
thing.
much.
But well, that's what I'm saying is you can't stoppable like Liberatore. They only know one way,
Hmm.
which is going hard. So, good to see that was coming off for him.
It is pretty much guaranteed though that he obviously won't play every game, considering his age. So you want to make sure you look after him. I can expect to maybe play at least minimum 15 games, I would say, and it should be.
Well, honestly, I reckon 20.
Oh,
I
20 would
don't
be
think
ideal,
you'll.
but I think just in case. I don't know how much travel the dogs actually have. I know we kind of looked at it earlier.
Oh, not much at the back half
Um,
of the season. They're pretty Vic centric.
oh, that's lucky for them. So yeah, who knows? He might actually get to 20 games, which would be really
Yeah,
really
I
good for him.
think he'll get a couple of restings and hopefully he doesn't get injured. But as I said, just give him one extra in case there's something.
Well, especially with the Bont going down, probably need someone like him and Trelaw to like step up a little bit more as
Yeah,
well. And that's probably too fair. That's probably
just
why he had such a good game because he had no Bont.
maybe. Who knows?
Anyway,
Wouldn't be
we did
surprised if
mention
they came
him.
up with ice packs on their shins
True.
after what's been going on there.
Yeah, very true. This is a player you did mention before, Rory Lobb. He's pretty much the new swingman for the Dogs. Played a key role in defense in this match, finishing with 16 disposals, 14 of them effective, 5 contested possessions, 11 intercepts, 7 marks, with 5 of them intercept marks, 2 score involvements, 12 pressure acts, 8 1%ers, 78 7 spoils. I would say 78 spoils. Oh my god, no way. 7 spoils
Yeah.
and 98% time on ground. I think he only touched the bench once, and that might have been right at the very end.
Yeah, well, as I said, they're going to have to rely on him, at least for the opening half of the season, to play that role without um, Lockie Jones, who did sort of have those sort of numbers down back. So, yeah, no, I said it was pretty good. Sort of did only what he needed to, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like, he was fairly good in providing that distribution, which is, I think, well, not distribution, but you know what? Putting the ball to distributors,
Yeah,
I should say,
yeah, that's right.
being fairly safe. So, which is what you expect when you have to take those minutes. You sort of have to restrain yourself, just so you can put those minutes into being accountable for almost all of the match.
Yeah, 100%. And then as you also mentioned before, young forward Lachlan McNeil was lively in front of goal, kicking 4 goals from 10 disposals, 8 of them effective, 5 contested possessions, 5 score involvements, 18 pressure acts, and 3 ground ball gets. So played the role that a small forward of his stature, I already said. Okay, English is hard. A small forward like him were kind of numbers that you would expect. Although 4 goals is very impressive.
Yeah, 3 in the first quarter, I should say. It wasn't first half, so.
Oh, that's even better. But I mean, kind of shooting yourself in the foot by going a little early.
Oh man, it's preseason, but yeah, as I said, um, sometimes you can have a really good game, like, and be consistent and only get 2 goals. So
Yeah, true.
you never turn down 4 goals.
And then for Hawthorn's side of things, new recruit Josh Battle showed off his defensive talents in the brown and gold, finishing with 27 disposals, 20 of them effective, 11 contested possessions, 11 intercepts, 6 marks, 8 pressure acts, and 8 ground ball gets. Pretty much exactly what they expected him to do when they recruited him, and can't complain with that performance. As much as the
Say,
forward line needed a bit more.
yeah, I will say I would actually expect maybe that this backline takes a few games to develop because
Yeah, I figured it wouldn't be
while
like
it
an
was all
instant
right,
gel.
yeah, as I said, there was just a bit of times where I think they were just working out like who was going to take the more aggressive approach. And, as I said, that was sort of the thing where you bring both, Battle and Barras, who are both pretty solid intercept defenders. You already have Scrimshaw, he's really big. So, as I said, they sort of rotated him a bit. Barris actually took to the bench after 3/4 time. So, yeah, it was just, I think it's going to be a bit interesting to see how quickly it does gel because I don't think it's going to be a problem after like 4 or 5 games, but You know what I mean? It's like whenever you introduce a new tall forward to the mix, with
Yeah,
that much rotations, you have to at least give it a few games to gel, make sure you know who's leading, or sorry, leaving their players and when, and
yeah. That's why,
all that sort of thing.
and that's why I feel like Sicily is the kind of player that needs to probably stay back because he's the one. Like last season, he was the one that kept that backline together. And whilst now you have that more
Yeah,
experience down there and more talent down there, you don't necessarily have that leadership down there, which is what Sicily would necessarily provide. Whereas granted, he's currently his usage is probably better in the forward line because they don't have much else right now.
mm,
But I think long term, I think he should probably stay as that number one defender in Hawthorn's defense.
yeah. I was just checking because oh no, okay, they haven't actually put out their leadership group, so it doesn't really matter.
Well, no, well, I mean
I thought
we
they
know
actually
Sicily's
were.
captain, like that hasn't changed. But
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, because I was actually wondering if any of those actually made the thing, but I think I remember hearing that they didn't actually change it from last year. So, uh, yeah. No, you said you're sort of right. Sicily is a director. You can see him shouting and pointing, giving the angry love speeches in the back half when things aren't going their
yeah,
way.
yeah, yeah.
A bit like Brendan Goddard used to do. Uh, but yeah, as I said, it'll take a bit, but as I said, they're well coached. They got good leadership with
100%.
Sicily, so
It'll just
they'll
take
find
time
ways to pull it
anyway.
together. Yeah.
And then next one is young forward Connor McDonald. Found his feet in front of goal, kicking 2 goals from 15 disposals, 14 of them effective, 4 contested possessions, 6 marks, 4 score involvements, 4 pressure acts, 3 grab ball gets. Again, as you mentioned, like it took a bit of time for that forward line to kind of kick into gear, but when they did, at least they had a couple of shining stars.
Yeah, no, and absolutely, because again, it's just the way that Hawthorn tend to move the ball and find avenues to goal. They do it a lot more of half forward than most teams. And Connor McDonald, as I said, in the shadows, a bit off. Oh, not Will Day, the other one.
Nick Watson,
Dylan Moore.
oh Dylan Moore, yeah,
Dylan
yeah, yeah.
Moore. He was a bit inaccurate in that match, although fairly lively. Um, yeah, as I said, so I think he might be one of the more important than you think players for Hawthorn because he's a pretty good user of the ball as well.
Yeah, 100%. I remember
An
last season
inefficient
he
disposal.
in the games that he did play, he was, fairly consistent. It was just a little underrated when you had players like Nick Watson, and Scholl popping off down there.
I think he might have actually played every game last season.
Did he? I
It
can't
would have been
remember.
close.
I know he played I know
It
he
was over
played like a big
20.
chunk.
Yeah.
Um
But you're right, he's just come from the outer to the inside, so
yeah, yeah, he's
he's
just
definitely stepped
good
up.
to get a little bit more limelight on him as well. And all right,
Yeah.
a last player that I want to highlight, known as the Warpedo, lovingly by pretty much everyone. James Warple was lively through the midfield, kicking 1-1 from 28 disposals, 21 of them effective, which makes it 75%. Congratulations, math. 17 contested possessions, 4 marks, 8 inside 50s, 10 clearances, 8 score involvements, 6 tackles, 22 pressure acts, 11 grab ball gets, and 586 meters gained. Pretty much did the role that they should have been doing, but clearly was not doing.
Yeah, well, as I said, it was sort of weird. They rotated a lot of their midfield units, so again, I'm not really sure I wouldn't say what was going on, but you know what I mean? It was just I think Hawthorn did want to test a few younger options in other areas. So Warpedo ended up taking the majority of it and was pretty good. So I think, yeah, their forward line will look a lot better next week. It was already winning clearances, so it wasn't bad, but you know what I mean? It wasn't as clinical in terms of transition
I mean,
as
yeah,
what it was last year.
considering how often Day was out injured for last season, it's not surprising
Mm.
that him and John Newcomb, have stepped up like so much more in that midfield.
Yeah, exactly. But as I said, they played Connor Nash at a bit more centre bounces than he was probably more used to. Cam McKenzie also. So yeah, as I said, I think Hawthorn was sort of shuffling around a bit. As I said, they came in with a stronger list, but they introduced their lesser, well, not lesser, but like Ransom, McCabe, just looking at it a bit earlier than other teams were. So I think they were just mucking around a tiny bit. So I wouldn't read too much into them.
Makes sense. All right, next on our list is the first match up in Queensland, being Brisbane versus Adelaide, with a pretty interesting scoreline.
Yeah, 13-16, 94. Brisbane to 14-13, 97, Adelaide. And as I said, it was the second most fun preseason game. A more interesting scoreline, less Coco based headlines. But again, there was a lot to like about Adelaide. And I think one of the biggest things for them was their captain, Jordan Dawson, kicking the winning goal for them and holding up their defense. Their defense held up late as the Lions did try and nab the win back off them.
Mm-hmm.
So it was pretty much a seesawing event. It was a bit of a comeback, though. I think Brisbane were leading for the majority of the night. And I think it was like 3 or 4 goals in maybe 10 minutes. So, yeah, it was a nice little final quarter by Adelaide. I'll also say there's some signs that the Crows have patched up their midfield a tiny bit. I mentioned it a lot last year, how their link up and some of their efforts weren't quite as good as it could be. Matt Crouch looked absolutely fantastic, along with Jordan Dawson. I was a bit critical last year, but so far he looks to step up a tiny bit more.
Mm-hmm.
James Peatling looked good in new colours. Jake Saligo contributed a lot, provided a lot of link up to the forwards, which was very good. Although Fogarty was probably the only one to really take advantage of this. He kicked 4 goals, I think. And yeah, Brisbane, I think they sort of looked great with their pressure on the ball carrier. Forced Adelaide into a lot of dump kicks, kicks that will get turned over.
Mm-hmm.
They looked a lot more switched on than last week, but I reckon they were still about 70 to 80% urgency. You know what I mean? They were like, I don't think they were as keen to prevent Adelaide from coming back. I think they were like a lot more running out that last quarter, which allowed Adelaide to get back in it. But it was still impressive because, sometimes when you're a younger team, you just need that, when a team gives you the opportunity, give you a bit of momentum. I know it's only preseason, but you sort of got to take it when you can get it. In terms of injury news, Starcevic is ruled out of round 0 with a concussion, though, as we'll probably mention again, a cyclone may bring that match forward anyway. Who knows what happens there. No injuries for Adelaide, and the kid, Sid Draper, is a smoky chance for round 1 with an excellent use of his limited minutes. I think he was only like 30 or 40% for the match, but he got involved pretty much straight away.
Very nice.
Especially playing that back half. Was actually a part of that comeback as well.
Very, very nice. As for individual performances, Captain Jordan Dawson will be the first big one. Being the kick the match winner, which fantastic for him. He was also a prolific ball mover, kicking again 2-1 from 24 disposals, 16 effective, 5 contested possessions, 7 marks, 8 inside 50s, 4 clearances, 7 score involvements, 9 tackles, 22 pressure acts, and 570 meters gained.
And I will say, I like this match winner a lot more because it didn't make me cry.
Oh yeah, that's yeah, but it's actually no, it doesn't affect you too much because as much as you go for Port, and these are the crosstown rivals, you don't live in Adelaide, so it doesn't affect you as much.
Yeah, I didn't have to deal with any of that nonsense, and as I said, it was a fantastic match. So,
well, there you go.
Yeah.
Key forward Darcy Fogarty kicked 3 goals from 10 disposals, 9 of them effective, which makes it 90% efficiency. Fun fact. 5 marks, 5 inside 50s, 6 score involvements, 7 pressure acts, 2 1%ers, and 2 spoils. That's the kind of performance you kind of expect from him, even though he's like much younger than someone like Ben Keys. It's still very strong, very important. Actually, I think they're about the same age. Anyway, Point
they've
is,
actually that hot. Yeah.
is like this is the strong performance you expect from a player like him, and it's very good to see for their forward line,
Mm.
especially with
Yeah. Keys is 28, Fogarty's 25. So
yeah,
there's a
I knew
bit.
Fogs was 25. I couldn't remember how old Keys was anyway, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's like it's a good performance from him, and it's good for Adelaide's forward line considering the issues that we had with their forward line last season.
Yeah, because Fogarty's a bit more low disposal than someone like a. Well, I don't want to say Phil Forbes like a high disposal, but he gets involved up the field a bit more.
Yeah,
Where Fogarty's definitely more for his goal kicking, so it did his job quite well. All that was required.
100%. And then last one for Adelaide, veteran Matt Crouch looks to be back to his near best, finishing with 29 disposals, 23 of them effective, 12 contested possessions, 5 intercepts, 3 marks, 6 clearances, are behind, 7 score involvements, 12 pressure acts, and 10 ground ball gets. We did see a little bit of this last season, but it's good to see him back at a little bit more high efficiency and high movement rates.
Yeah, well, I reckon Matt Crouch would have. Well, it depends because as I said, if you're saying Matt Crouch could play the whole season, then Isaac Rankin, you could probably make that argument. But yeah, if Matt Crouch played the whole season, he would have been second behind Isaac Rankin in this theoretical no injury, no suspension world. But amongst their top 3 anyway.
Yeah, 100%. And then for Brisbane, co-captain Lachie Neale was at his usual best in the middle. He kicked 1-1 from 30 disposals, 18 of them effective, 15 contested possessions, 5 marks, 5 intercepts, 10 clearances, 10 score involvements, 17 pressure acts, 10 ground ball gets, and 445 meters gained. So, it's kind of expected from him. That's normal. Don't really have to say too much on that. Next is key defender Jack Payne, who was solid in defense, finishing with 13 disposals, 11 of them effective, 7 contested possessions, 9 intercepts, with 3 of them being intercept marks, 5 marks overall, 3 score involvements, 7 1%ers, 6 spoils, and 92% time on ground. We kind of talked about him a fair amount last season, especially in that lead up to the grand final and in the grand final itself. Very, very solid, and I think, definitely a more important pillar of that backline now.
Yeah, and it's one of those things too where I noticed is how some forwards like get defenders a bit nervous and you get a bit angsty on them, give away the free kick. I noticed Phil Ford giving a few easier free kicks at I think it was either 1 or 2 in marking contests. So yeah, so I think that gives you a bit of props when you upset your opponent enough to where they're starting to infringe on you. And I think Jackson Payne's just sort of that annoyingly solid key defender for Brisbane.
Yeah, 100%. And then young midfielder Jasper Fletcher was important in ball movement, kicking 1-2 from 16 disposals, with 13 of them effective, 4 contested possessions, 6 intercepts, 8 marks, with 3 of them being inside 50, 7 score involvements, 11 pressure acts, 4 ground ball gets, and 2 spoils.
Yeah, I know. So playing on the wing, as I said, all the focus is on the inside ball movement for the Lions, but along with Jared Berry, they look pretty solid on the outside. So
yeah, and as you said,
and it's not to be slept on.
Brisbane were probably playing at only 70-80% efficiency as well. So there's still a lot more that they could reveal as the season begins.
No, I said I think this was actually an impressive game for Brisbane as well. You know what I mean? I think it's just Brisbane didn't have as much need to go harder. They probably checked all their boxes at 3/4 time. A few things are probably going to go away. I'm sure they would rather Ty Gallop or Sam Day maybe to get more involved. Their key forwards didn't really have much of it, but at the same time, Adelaide's defense is pretty fantastic. Josh Worrell, I thought, had another absolutely stunning game and got a cheeky little goal from a 50-meter penalty, which I don't think he was expecting. So nice to get him on the board. Probably would have rather that. Probably would have rather it in the regular season. I don't think he's kicked a goal in his career, but he's got one in the preseason. So
hey, goal is a goal sometimes. All right, let's move on to a game that maybe was much less impressive. Was GWS versus Carlton.
The sleeping giants left lie 9, 12, 66 to 18, 16, 124. Their defense looked absolutely shocking. I watched the first half of this and I really couldn't believe how badly they got beaten up by the Blues, who are playing a bit of a patchwork still forward line, but still play pretty well.
Mhm.
As I said, they were playing uh, what's his name?
The Koning.
Not Boyd. No. Played back last year. Played forward in the makeshift games. I gotta have that team. I need to switch
Oh,
it. My brain's fired.
Kemp.
Camp. There we go. Yeah, Kempy looked pretty impressive, and honestly, they sort of struggled marking him. Really, it was a bit surprising considering that the Giants are very much good in that backup, well, not backup, but restriction in the forward 50. So that was very interesting. Tom de Koning also dominated before being rested in favour of a Young and Cripps combo. So again, sort of just got what they needed to win out of him. Ollie Hollins looked to play defensive wing half as Zach Williams played useful in the forward half. And as I said, a lot of moving parts. Not by, sorry, all by force, mind you. Like they're not sort of, going to the drawing board just because. But yeah, they look pretty sound. I'd say the only sell point for them is like McGovern doing that minor ankle tweak. I think he was benched a bit after the third quarter, maybe. Oh, sorry, after the second quarter, halftime.
Yep, makes sense.
But yeah, GWS, the midfield, nowhere to be seen. Their backline, nowhere to be seen. Their forward line did okay. But yeah, one of the concerning things was they got absolutely dominated in the clearances. I will say though, 2023 first round draft pick, James Leake, he tried really hard, had a team high 6 clearances, and overall, pretty solid from the little bit that I watched of him. And the other youngsters, mid-season pickup for the Blues, Cooper Lord from 2024. He was fantastic in the middle. He had stats actually rivaling some of the big guns who played solid minutes in terms. Players like Cripps and Chera, I think it was. So they all sort of shared possessions in the middle. Cooper Lord, although he wasn't as impactful as the other two, for a young kid, was very good. And big standout, son of a gun, Lucas Camporelli, the one picked second, but showing he wasn't going to be second fiddle, as he was providing an aggressive spark to Carlton's ball movement. And we sort of mentioned that, for Carlton, it would be really nice if they had like an outside Camporelli and an inside Camporelli.
We were kind of joking when we
'cause
said that, but
I know, but you know what I mean? Like they needed an outside player, but also with Jagger Smith coming down, someone to fill the gap there. But yeah, as I said, Lucas Camporelli, I could see a lot of potential in him working with Akers, because Akers is a really good runner, is a really good marking not contested mark, good at creating marking contests. So, if you add Akers as a bit more of a defensive one, I know he does like to drift forward, but his ball use is sometimes a bit air. So, you know what? It's just I just think Camporelli and Akers seems to be a good mix, and I think we might be seeing a bit of that. Maybe not every round. I'm sure Camporelli will be worked into the side, but
yeah,
that's a really good start from him.
Yeah, 100%. My individual performances, we did mention him just before. Brody Kemp, he was pushed forward this match, normally a key defender. Kicked 3-1, and he also collected 13 disposals, 10 of them effective, 7 contested possessions, 7 marks, with 5 of them inside 50, 8 score involvements, 8 pressure acts, and 5 ground ball gets, which all of them were in forward 50 as well. George Hewitt was a pressure ball in the midfield, finished with 18 disposals, 16 of them effective, 8 contested possessions, 3 intercepts, 3 inside 50s, a goal, 7 score involvements, 8 tackles, 17 pressure acts, and 6 ground ball gets. And then Cooper Lord as we had just mentioned, one of Carlton's newer recruits showed promising signs through the midfield, collecting 20 disposals, 12 of them effective, 10 contested possessions, 4 marks, 3 inside 50s, 7 clearances, 6 score involvements, 3 tackles, 19 pressure acts, 5 ground ball gets, and 338 meters gained.
Yeah, as I said, I think he's probably going to be one of the more promising ones from Carlton, since Jagger Smith has gone down. Youngsters that they might look to. Because he was okay last year. I didn't see too much of him. It was mainly in the, I think it was the last couple of games. But yeah, as I said, he seemed very impressive from the half that I watched anyway.
Yeah, you just want to hope that with Smith, that he doesn't succumb to the kind of injury woes and struggles that Walsh had very early in his career before he got a lot fitter and a lot more stable. So hopefully in long-term positive signs for Smith and Carlton's younger players.
Yeah. Well, as I said, unfortunately, sometimes, you can't dictate when you get a major injury. If you have a long career, you're bound to get one. But, you know, hopefully Jagger comes back. But there's a lot of good signs to say that Carlton have a lot of midfield / high half forward depth to where ball movement shouldn't be an issue. Still got to work on that ground ball stuff. I must admit though, Fantasia did very well.
Yeah, he did.
Probably more so than the other two. Not always. What's his name? Oh, Frankie Evans, who played a tiny bit, and Cottrell, who unfortunately couldn't hit anything.
Is what it may be is. Anyway, onto some players for the Giants who thought looked alright. 2024 Coleman medalist Jesse Hogan had the kicking shoes on. He slotted 3-1 from 10 disposals, 8 of them being effective. 6 marks with 3 of them inside 50 and 4 score involvements. Again, granted, as much as we would have liked to have seen Stringer play, just to see what that forward line looks like with both of them, I think he did, the best that he kind of could with what he was given.
Yeah, you got to protect Stringer, really.
Yeah.
I think he's just a player, where you're going to get with him, so there's not too much point putting him in the preseason.
No, agreed. Especially, I think once the season officially starts, we'll kind of really see how they gel and how they play off of each other. Lockie Whitfield, the veteran off half back, was very prolific, collecting 28 disposals with 24 of them effective, 5 contested possessions, 5 marks, 4 inside 50s, a goal assist, 7 score involvements, 10 pressure acts, and 512 meters gained. Did some really good work, doing a lot of good transition play, good travel, good ball traversal, I should say. And yeah, just kind of stuff that you kind of expect from him.
Yeah. I thought Lockie Ash, though, I thought he was like a smidgen better, with around similar sort of stat disposals. But I think Whitfield and Lockie Ash at least both look to be progressing a bit better movement. I don't think that's actually where GWS were lacking a bit in this match.
No, I agree.
I know being a bit critical of their movement, but overall it was okay.
Yeah, agreed.
Well, at least from the half I watched.
And then their shutdown mid, Toby Bedford, was a pressure bull, as we've kind of learned from last season. He finished with only 11 disposals, 9 of them effective, 5 contested possessions, 2 inside 50s, a goal, 3 score involvements, but he had 8 tackles, 22 pressure acts, a 1%er, and 2 ground ball gets, both of them inside 50. He's a tagger now. That's kind of his role within that midfield group. And, he definitely did that to a solid effect. I'm pretty sure he was tagging Cripps for most of the match.
Yeah, he was just sort of hanging around him. Prevented him getting as effective a disposal. We've seen that sort of thing on Cripps, Sometimes the best thing, even if it's not limiting his disposal, is making sure his disposal's worse. And, as I said, Cripps was in and around it, but wasn't as damaging. So,
I mean, Cripps
did his job.
Look at the scoreline. Cripps didn't need to be as damaging, really.
No, well, still. As I said, preseason microcosm in terms of jobs, so I don't think Toby Bedford would be too concerned, about the rest of it. But yeah.
Yeah, that's fair enough. All right, next match that was played up in Queensland, the Gold Coast Suns versus the Sydney Swans.
Yeah, well, this is another one where Sydney, they put out the raw side, for a lot of injuries. They couldn't field a lot of their best 22. Gold Coast were playing what I would consider almost a best 22. A couple of players out, Sam Flanders and a few others. But yeah, Sydney just showed far superior ball movement as they pretty much dispatched Gold Coast with relative ease. It was a very scrappy game. I must admit, I only really half watched this. It was a bit of a tough ask to watch. Um, but yeah, Gold Coast just had no answers to the tolls like McCartan and Amati.
Mm-hmm.
Whilst their own tolls didn't really get much involvement at all, despite generally getting similar looks. In fact, I think Gold Coast had I think it was like 15 more inside 50s than Sydney. That was another game where it was, lopsided but still lost sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I'll say it was pretty much an all round distribution from the Sydney youngsters. Again, Sydney chose to rotate their players a lot more. So, yeah, as I said, a lot of the youngsters got earlier time, but still looking to be about that 70 odd minute mark. But in terms of them, uh, Riley Bice, I think it is, Hanley, Riak Andrews, who, showed a tiny bit on his debut,
Mm-hmm.
and Kirk all showed something with their 3/4 of a wish of the match um, feature. I think Riak was a bit later. I think he got introduced after halftime. And yeah, Jake Rogers for the Suns, whilst inaccurate, he was fairly involved in their forward line. Jake Rogers being an early draft pick from last year.
Mm-hmm.
Other than that, though, the Suns didn't really play too many young players. Lockie Goulburn and Ben Jepson, I think, were the only ones from this year's draft picks. Both just featured. Not really too much to say there, but yeah, as I said, it's just I don't know. Oh, again, not reading too much into it, but I did seem a bit Olsbear repeating. You know what I mean? It's like another game where Anderson, and I'm not actually going to blame this on Anderson. I actually thought some of his entries were a bit better. But you know what I mean? He gets like a lot of the pill, gets, a fair few entries inside 50, but
Yeah.
nothing much comes from them. Same with a few others. Again, a lot of their goal kicking came from the outside. Ben Ainsworth sort of playing up half forward. He did really well, as Sam Closey as well.
Mm-hmm.
So they're getting a lot from their half five forward / wingers. But in terms of their forward line, pure,
Yeah,
really wasn't much at all.
there wasn't anything there at all from what we saw.
Yeah, it was probably one of the more disappointing ones, especially when they look so good in their other two practice matches. But you know what I mean? You just got to put that behind you, work on a few things, and they got to turn around shortly because they're both playing round one. But well, when I say turn around, unfortunately, I'm talking about injuries for Sydney because they did lose Errol Goulden for what's looking to be months with an ankle injury. I think they said it was a tendon. Might have been syndesmosis, actually. I can't quite. I saw it, but I didn't write
I
it
read
down.
something about it, I think being syndesmosis, but I can't 100% remember.
Yeah. And Mac Andrews, unfortunately, picked up a major injury with his shoulder. I think it's AC joint. But yeah, so I don't think they've announced anything yet, but I'm imagining it's going to be a week by week sort of case for him.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe misses round 0, probably back by round 2, but hopefully not any longer, if so.
It's unlucky because
Sorry, round 1.
in this practice game he got to play against his brother, so it's
I would have, yeah.
unfortunate
So
timing.
I think it was like, honestly, it might have been in the first 5 minutes he went down. It was very quick, so
Oh.
it was very unfortunate. And as well, for the Suns, Swallow, Uwella, and Ballard all sat out the game with lesser injuries, but are still sweating that close turnaround to round 0. While I think someone on the outside that might put his hand up, Joel Jeffries didn't play consistently in 2024, but
Mm-hmm.
he looked absolutely fantastic. So he might be a player looking to replace him. Or sorry, one of those players if they don't come up well. So yeah.
At least they have some options. It's better than having no options, but
Yeah, well, it's going to be the interesting thing because Ethan Reed as well. he's still a smoky to play just because Jed Walters isn't going to be playing round one.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, it's going to be interesting here they decide to play. They've got a lot of okay-ish depth. You know what I mean? Like, it's one of the downside of their list building where a lot of their fringes are actually like experienced players, but they're just not quite best 22. I'm talking about players like what was the forward one called?
Uh,
Nick Coleman,
yeah.
Connor Butterick. His was more injury, but he sort of fell a bit out of favor. Players like that. I'm pretty sure there's another one.
There's got to be a couple.
The list is full of them.
Yeah.
So.
The Suns are kind of just like that. They just have a bunch of these players, and they just don't have a huge amount.
Yeah,
of
well,
use
they cleaned up a bit last season, but I guess the flip side of that is it's good that they kept enough depth, but a few of those, Alex Sexton.
Oh yeah, Sexton's fallen out of favor. Really tragic for him.
So.
But yeah, anyway,
they got people.
Yeah.
Not their first options.
True. All right, for my individual performances, I am going to highlight someone who was originally a forward early in his career, drifted into defense for a while, but now has returned to the forward line, and that's Tom McCartan. He kicked 4-1 from 14 disposals, 7 of them effective, so it's a 50% success rate on those disposal efficiency. 4 contested possessions, 7 marks, 3 inside 50, 7 score involvements, and 3 ground ball gets, all of them being inside 50.
Will you think that he plays round 1 in the forward line? Or round 0, I should say. Playing at the SCG against Hawthorn on Friday.
Performance like that? I would say yes. However, Hawthorn's backline might show a different promise to what they showed this week. So who knows?
It's just their backline's so thin. I can't really see them persisting, but it did hold up against the Suns, albeit the Suns sort of did a bit of defending for them. But
true.
Yeah, it's just so hard because, again, Sydney didn't put in they played a lot of kids just to try and weed out which ones are going to be, because they've got a few more players back from this list. So
yeah, they will.
It's going to be interesting, because it said off the back of this, in a vacuum, yeah, you would play him forward, but I think it would depend a lot on who they get back for round 1.
Well, yeah, I mean, and it's only a couple of days away as of recording, and when this episode releases, it's literally 2 days away. So it's gonna be like very, very close. Because I'm pretty sure Sydney Hawthorn play Friday night, so it's it's gonna be they're gonna be really like cutting it close for time in terms of who they get back and where they want to play him.
Yep.
Next on my list is young mid Angus Sheldrick. I thought he looked pretty good, finishing with 22 disposals, 10 of them effective, 14 contested possessions, 7 clearances, 5 score involvements, 7 tackles, 27 pressure acts, 10 ground ball gets, and 410 meters gained.
Yeah, as I said, shown in bits last year, but absolutely fantastic when given a bit of limelight. Preseason can kind of do that. Again, Sydney's midfield stacked, but with Mills missing a bit of the early season, I think Sheldrick's now sort of that next in line person, to take some centre bounce minutes if need be. So.
Yeah, I agree, and it takes some of the pressure off of like Heaney and Papley as well at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. You can be versatile with him, or even as I said, we're still questioning whether Taylor Adam gets into the starting team, but if you do, like, it's not pressure to play midfield minutes if he doesn't need to. He can be that sort of hybrid, high half forward, inside midfielder.
Yeah, absolutely. And then key defender Aaron Francis was prolific in defense, collecting 20 disposals, 13 of them effective, 8 contested possessions, 8 intercepts, 9 marks, 3 score involvements, 9 1%ers, 5 ground ball gets, and 7 spoils.
Yeah, again, it was surprising. Like, him and Joel Hamling, again, not if you're making the list of like the best defenders or whatever, like none of these will get even close because A, they're injury prone, and B, they've been up and down in form. I think Hamlin's a bit better than Francis, but like honestly, like this is the argument for having Tom McCartan forward. If Aaron Francis comes back and does a role, Hamling probably starts in the best 22 then. maybe that works.
Yeah, that's kind of the juggle they've got to kind of think about. Is that if Hamling and Francis and whoever else they have down in defense kind of holds up, why not just have McCartan
It's not
forward?
that
But
much.
if it's not going to hold, yeah, it's
Yeah.
very thin. So that's kind of the question they've got to ask themselves. Is that
Yeah, it
if you
depends
go
if you
up,
call Blakey.
I think it
I'd say
also
Blakey's a medium-sized defender, but
yeah,
you
true.
can count him
But
as
I think
big.
it also depends on which teams they go against as to whether they'll put McCartan forward or
Yeah,
back.
exactly. I think against a three-team backline, maybe they put McCartan there, but if you're up against, well, the Suns,
Hmm.
yeah, less pressure to try and do that.
Yeah, for sure. For the Suns, speaking of, midfield ball Matt Rowell. It was either going to be him or Anderson that I was going to kind of highlight here. I'll be honest. I was tossing up between them, but Rowell was a pressure machine as he kind of normally is. Finishing with 31 disposals, 19 of them effective, with 18 contested possessions, 6 intercepts, 6 inside 50s, 8 clearances, a behind, 7 score involvements, 5 tackles, 23 pressure acts, 12 ground ball gets, with 2 of them being inside 50, and 362 meters gained.
Yeah, as I said, I don't know, it felt a bit like one of those Matt Rowell games where sometimes he was like, he was almost swallowing up their own scrappiness, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's still good to see him fit and firing, so
Yeah,
not too
absolutely. I
much
mean, he's
concerns there.
number 1 draft pick for a reason. You got to show off those talents.
Yeah, for sure.
Speaking of talents, talented defender Will Powell stood tall in defense. Collected 21 disposals, with 20 of them being effective. 9 contested possessions, 9 intercepts, 6 marks, 3 inside 50s, 9 1%ers, 6 ground ball gets, and 7 spoils.
Yeah, I'm not actually sure he played. Yeah, I'm not sure if you're reading this off Fan Footy, which is normally where I lightly read stats, but I saw he was playing a bit more on the wing as well, but
I might have
maybe I'm
rotated like
imagining that.
halfback to wing, that
Yeah,
kind of position.
so yeah, as I said, he was definitely a lot more involved. Again, probably with Sam Flanders not playing,
Yeah.
he's like the next best back half distributor in line, so maybe that's why we saw him come up a bit, but he took to it very well.
Yeah, he looked pretty solid, especially in the brief highlights that I saw because I didn't get to catch this game. So the highlights definitely
Yeah,
showed him off a little bit more.
he didn't miss much.
Yeah, I know. And then young midfielder Sam Closey, as you kind of mentioned before, was one of their 2 multiple goal scorers. He kicked 2 goals from 21 disposals, 15 of them effective, 5 contested possessions, 6 intercepts, 5 tackles, and 13 pressure acts. Again, like their forward line didn't really show up. There was their midfield doing a lot of the work.
Yeah.
Converting up forward. It was just, I mean, it's good to see Closey get multiple goals, but yeah, you want to see a lot more from that forward line going into the season.
Yeah, as I said, that was the biggest thing, and I'm not sure. I didn't quite see, but I'm pretty sure they got smashed in their marks inside 50.
Probably.
Just check it now, but I don't know. Sorry, it was pretty low all round, so it was 6 to 7. So there wasn't really much anyway.
That's not too bad.
Yeah, but yeah, as I said, there just wasn't too much. Again, entries were a bit mediocre. Again, yeah, as I mentioned before, it wasn't quite 15. It was, wait, no, that's more than 15. That's 17. I can do math. That's 17 more inside 50s than the Swans.
Yes, that's right.
But still, got beaten in scoring shots. Yes. Ish. No. 8 plus 15's less, more than 12 plus 12. Yeah, anyway, I'm tired.
It's all good. Don't worry about it.
Yes. Anyway, only by 1.
Next on our list is your game, actually. St Kilda versus Port Adelaide.
I'm glad I'm a Port fan, because otherwise this would have been an ass game to
I could have gone to this game, actually.
Yeah?
Because it's not that far from me. Or say
not that far, but yeah, it was pretty dismal for the Saints, though. Few injuries, Stocker, Owen, Sharman, the latter 2 probably going to be out for a tiny bit. Terrible forward half efficiency, and their ball movement was pretty mediocre, as Port looked like they were toying with them at times. Willie Rioli kicked 3 before being put on ice to rest his aware calf. So he's a bit touch and go for round one, when they'll be playing. Finlayson, Bergman, and Evans. A lot's been said about Port's defence. How are they going to shape up without their key backs? But they look fantastic. Again, going off some pretty terrible entries, but even when they were forced to defend well, especially Finlayson, Bergman was very responsible, and Logan Evans, he was just cutting off everything. So absolutely fantastic. Youngster too, Joshua Sin did as well, but he was only playing half minutes.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, for the two new recruits, Lukosius and Richards, they both distributed and presented pretty fantastically. Offensively, I won't talk about him too much because you're going to be talking about him, but Bokshol, I'm pretty sure this year's draft pick, I think it was around mid.
He was signed this year's draft.
Yeah, he distributed a lot up forward and was very clean. I was very impressed by his game. Isaac Keeler, he did well, albeit in junk time. But I will say he was working hard and presenting the leads before St Kilda got a bit in the fourth quarter.
Mm-hmm.
And then he actually got, I think, a goal for a very nice mark inside 50. So he got a bit of a reward there. And I think Liam O'Connell, he probably a good chance to get selected for round one. Sort of, can't remember. I think he was again like a mid-ish sort of pick. Yeah, he showed a little bit. But yeah, it wasn't pretty for the Saints.
Yeah, it's
defensively,
expect.
Yeah,
I mean, the injuries didn't help, but
yeah, I know, but I think it was just the way there was so many loose people in defense. Like, I could understand if it was like more player-based matchups, but yeah, as I said, considering that they were such a good back half team, it was sort of surprising to see them being so bad in that area.
Well, I still
granted a few
kind of figure out how to deal with the loss of Battle because he was doing a lot of that hard work.
Yeah, I was even saying more in transition, but again, a few of the normally reliable people had a few uncharacteristic errors, like Bradley Hill, and I thought he went better as the game went on, but he was a bit iffy early. Nasai Wengani Malira.
Yeah.
Yeah, as I said, just made a few mistakes here and there, sort of in the costly areas of their transition, but not many people around the ground were doing all that much better. Even their more prolific users like Jack McRae, who I thought was really good, but still had a few turnovers. Sort of expect it from a guy like him, but just a very. It just seemed like there was always someone in the chain for St Kilda, turning it over at the worst moments. So, as for Port, they were moving it quite comfortably, especially in defence.
Yep.
Finlayson, even some of his ball movement was pretty fantastic. Jace Burgoyne as well, I'll say, on the wing in that transition. And I thought it was really good to see Sam Pepper get back into it. Blazed a bit early, but eventually got 2 goals after, I think, kicking 2 straight behind. So, yeah, good things there. And overall, just solid signs for most of Port's team. Not much resistance, but great to see.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a good starting point for them going into the rest of the start of this season as well. Right. As for individual performances, of course I was going to highlight him, Connor Rozee. Why would I not?
Yeah.
He was prolific through the midfield, finished with 39 disposals, 35 of them being effective, 12 contested possessions, 5 intercepts, 7 marks, 8 clearances, a goal, 10 score involvements, 7 tackles, 25 pressure acts, 8 grand ball gets, and 385 meters gained. This wasn't just a Connor Rozee game, this was a captain's game.
Yeah, and it was classy too. Like I mentioned last year, he didn't, even though Butters I consider more the hard nut of the two, Connor Rozee was a bit iffy, but yeah, this one he was finding time and space. He was almost always doing the right thing. Went at 89% efficiency. So yeah, as I said, for 39 disposals, it was pretty fantastic.
Yeah, it was a monster game from him. Jordan Sweet took on the number one ruck duties as he did last season over Ivan Soldo, getting 28 hit-outs, 9 to advantage, 11 disposals, 7 of them effective, 4 contested possessions, 4 marks, 5 tackles, and 11 pressure acts. You know, as I mentioned earlier, like we're going to look at some of the big rucks that played during these matches, and Jordan Sweet's one of them, and he did pretty well against what's his name? I have already forgotten.
Rowan Marshall.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah,
because I do quite like.
Rowan Marshall didn't play. Harry Boyd played.
That's right. Yeah, that's why he probably was a little bit more dominant, Jordan Sweet. Because I do like Rowan Marshall, and I think they match up against each other really well. But yeah, like Sweet looks really good.
Yeah, no, Sweet looked pretty good around the ground. Evan Soldo did take a few.
He did. I did see that.
They're sort of mixed and matched sort of thing, but yeah, John Sweet just looks to offer a bit more around the ground because it's a bit weird. Like, you think of Van Soldo, the way he's been recruited, the career pathway as that forward that turned into a ruckman would provide a bit more on offense, but it just seems whenever you watch him, John Sweet, whether it's his own tap work or actually, I think he slotted a nice goal from a mark as well. He just seems a bit more all round. I don't know. I still think Van Soldo has, like, you know, especially in that practice match, some upside, and I won't be surprised if he does find another home. But
I mean, one thing that he does have over Jordan Sweet is a premiership medallion.
I mean, after this year, he knows.
Yeah,
he knows.
Yeah, we'll see.
Maybe.
Anyway, shifting from forward into defense, Jeremy Finlayson collected 29 disposals, 21 of them effective, 5 contested possessions, 7 intercepts, 13 marks, 7 score involvements, 5 pressure acts, 4 spoils, and 403 meters gained. Again, they just beat them in the air, beat them on the ground, beat them pretty much everywhere for the most part.
And I said there's some score involvements. Like, that was off some pretty deep. Like, he ran up a bit, but you know what I mean? Most of the party was pretty much not quite last line, but you know. So it wasn't just that. He was able to generate some ball movement. And I think even when he comes back, that might be the question of like whether you play him versus Radicalia, because in terms of an athletic toll, I know Jeremy Finlayson, I've criticised some of his more decision making, but at least some of his possessions, like, because they were less timid, you know, like Radagalia's like someone who will probably like fluff a 2-meter handball and, you know, get that turned over. Where Jeremy Finlayson, you know, he'll take some riskier kicks, but it's more likely to like miss over the top. You get more chance to run back, sort of thing. So yeah, honestly, he didn't even turn the ball over that much, or if at all, really. And yeah, I said I just like the way he went about playing defense. I was probably the most impressed of the Port players, considering
the
from this preseason. Well, consider relative expectations, I should say.
Yeah, that's valid. All right, for the Saints, you did mention it before, but recruit Jack McRae kind of shone in his new colours for the most part. Again, he did have a couple of clangers, a couple of turnovers, but put up.
For a preseason, it was fine.
Yeah,
like, it's still good to see him involved.
Yeah, he put up some solid numbers otherwise. 32 disposals, so 21 of them effective, 16 contested possessions, 5 intercepts, 3 inside 50s, 7 clearances, 7 score involvements, 5 tackles with 3 of them inside 50, 16 pressure acts, and 11 ground ball gets. You know, it's what they wanted him for, and he's putting up.
Yeah, exactly.
Putting him up so far.
Whether he's on the inside, on the outside. I think he predominantly played wing, but sort of one of those stoppage clearance players, which they needed. So
yeah, majority of his clearances came from stoppages.
Yeah. So as I said, you know, if there's like a ball up, you'll see young Jack McRae, 30-year-old Jack McRae waddle to the contest.
He's ball hungry. Let him feast.
Oh yeah, it was a good waddle too.
Yeah, 100%.
It's almost as good as the Dane Swan waddle. He was always one of my favourite waddlers.
As you mentioned also before, draft pick Hugh Boxall was one or two multiple scorers for the Saints, kicking 2 goals from 15 disposals, 12 of them effective, 8 contested possessions, 3 intercepts, 4 marks, 5 inside 50s, 5 score involvements, 10 pressure acts, and 362 meters gained. Very solid start to his AFL career. Whether he gets picked for round one. Obviously, that remains to be seen, but I think he's definitely in the mix.
Yeah, no, exactly. I would play him, but again, it depends on a few other players, like Hunter Clark, obviously still coming back from injury.
Mm-hmm.
Hugo Garcia is another one that could see a lot of middle times. Like,
Yes.
I could see Boxall being the sub and coming on. But yeah, I reckon Hugo Garcia's probably taking that minutes, Jack Steele, and then, after that, it's a very much a mix of whoever they got left, really.
Yeah,
I
it
think
really is.
I think Sinclair still can play back. I think they persist with that just for future. But yeah, as I said, you're working on players like Boxall. Um, yeah, as I said,
Garcia.
yeah, yeah. Jack McRae. Look, I mean, it's not the biggest depth in the world, but it's building.
It's dependable for the most part.
I wouldn't say dependable, but it's there. If there's room for growth, there's room for growth.
Speak true. But speaking of someone who is dependable, veteran defender Cal Wilkie finished with 16 disposals, with 13 of them effective, 8 contested possessions, 8 intercepts, 4 marks, 8 pressure acts, 4 1%ers, 4 spoils, and 100% time on ground. He did the best he could.
Yeah, there was like a couple of contests early where he got beaten and I was a bit concerned, but I think as the game went on, as I said, tightened up a bit. Again, I know it's like, the sort of the opposite to Hawthorn, but when you get stripped of that defense, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
A few different things change and you can't play as loose as you might want to, run off or whatever. You get punished a lot more for any tiny error. So, yeah, and considering how much of this back half was turning the ball over, it was a lot of work. I mean, he has Zane Cordy back there, but I think he was struggling a tiny bit.
Yeah,
Georgiadis sort of took a lot of marks on him, only scored 1 goal too, but I think he definitely had the better of the evening. So, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, and
Yeah, it was
especially
good enough.
and as you mentioned before, with like Sinclair and them kind of keeping him down back rather than pushing him into the midfield a bit more. Just need to try and with that battle, they need to try and secure like a stronger core. And I think him like Sinclair, Wilkie, Dougal Howard, maybe they're kind of like the
When he gets back.
yeah when he gets back. It's like they're probably going to be like the key three, and then they'll just try and hopefully structure decently around them.
Yeah, well, I'll say they'll probably get the one that isn't Chaka Cavalia. What's the other blondie? When he gets back, they'll
I
put
know who
some
you're
minutes
talking about. I
into him.
cannot remember the name, but yeah.
Yeah,
They've still got a fair few injuries I need to sort through.
has a V in it, doesn't it?
Travaglia does have a V in it.
Or Travaglia has a V. I feel like it's another T1. I don't know.
Can't remember.
I'm gonna look
Anyway,
up Sainsbury's.
we have more games to cover.
Yeah.
This I wasn't
Oh
expecting
wait,
this to be as close as it was, but West Coast and
yeah.
North Melbourne, like, granted, bottom 4 teams, but still, like, this ended up being kind of interesting.
Interesting's a bit of a stretch.
Kind of interesting.
I watched it. It was. I don't think it was all their fault though, because it was a struggle match and it was at a fairly blustery Hands Oval in Bunbury. There was a lot of wind, from what I saw. Eagles probably dealt with it a bit better. They converted with less possessions and forward entries, whilst North's midfield looked to rev up, with the brand new recruits in Darling and Daniels both having solid opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
But their forward line very much struggled with the win. They struggled converting. There's a few missed possessions here and there. Probably overpossessed it, considering. But again, depends on how you view preseason philosophy. It's like, do you really want to play your wind game sort of plan in it? Because you want to practice for your average game in a regular in a preseason. So it really depends how they wanted to go about it. They'll know more so what to take out of it. But I will say, talking about recruits, Liam Baker slotted in almost as well as you'd like and kicked the match winner while your boy, Jack Graham,
The fridge.
the fridge, he provided a big body contest. So that was good to see.
Well, that's
Especially since they weren't playing Elijah Hewitt, so just had
that's
another one in the
exactly why he
midfield
was
group.
recruited, because that's the kind of role that he had at Richmond, is just being a big body
Yeah.
contested player.
And yeah, as I said, I didn't watch too much of this game. I vaguely remember at some point, I think I just watched a bit to see what the Oval was like.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, as I said, it's not going to be as blustery away from summer. Well, you would think anyway. But yeah, as I said, it was a bit, yeah, the Oval looked nice. And they got a decent crowd there, but yeah, as I said, this wouldn't be exactly the showcase I would have picked for it. So, but no injuries. Castante, Robert Hansen Jr., they both played okay for the Kangaroos.
Mm-hmm.
Whilst pick number 2, O'Sullivan, had a pretty strong day out, drifting around the ground. I don't think he played wing, but it was just sort of sometimes he played in the middle. I think time he played off halfback or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Again, just going off what I read. Well, for some of the Eagles debut, Archer Reed from 2023 and Bo Allen from this year's draft pick, they both struggled in the conditions. It was a pretty iffy day from some players. Some took to it well, some didn't. And unfortunately for both the Eagles rookies, didn't really take to it. So, yeah, it was just one of the more games of the preseason, I'll say.
It was a game.
It was a game.
One of the games of all time. All right, but as for individual highlights, rejuvenated spearhead Jake Waterman was accurate, kicking 4-1 from 8 disposals, 5 of them being effective. 3 marks, all from inside 50, 6 score involvements, 2 1%ers, and 2 spoils. So not only did he play, typical, kick goal forward, he also impacted a lot of contests to a benefit to their forward line. And it's good, especially because it's still missing Oscar Allen for a little bit. He's got to have that workload on his shoulders again for a little bit.
And 4-1 in those conditions, like anyone with finishing with a positive goal percentage was pretty. Either you're like getting it off the ground, or you had a pretty good night shooting.
Former Tiger Jack Graham, the fridge, as we mentioned, looked very comfortable and fit on ball. It's good to see that his shoulder injuries haven't had a massive impact for his time so far at West Coast. He looks pretty healthy. He collected 18 disposals, 11 of them effective, 12 contested possessions, 3 intercepts, 5 clearances, 6 tackles, 30 pressure acts, and 10 ground ball gets. That's exactly why he went over there. Why Mini wanted him at West Coast is exactly for that kind of play style. And then veteran Tim Kelly looked in pretty solid form. 22 disposals, 14 of them effective, 16 contested possessions, 5 marks, 8 clearances, a goal, 6 score involvements, 8 tackles, 25 pressure acts, and 12 ground ball gets. Especially when they do not want to put too much pressure on that number 1 draft pick. That we don't have to mention the name of because we talked too much about him already. But it's good that Tim Kelly, especially with Elliot Yeo being out again with injury, it's good that Tim Kelly stepped up a little bit more and actually showed some of his talents that we haven't actually gotten to really see over the past couple of years.
Yeah, but I think that's the other side because I don't think you'll see Tim Kelly ever being that hard in and out ball winner. So again, going back to Jack Graham, I think he's someone that if he lifts a bit, I know he wants to lift to get the other young kids going, but Tim Kelly will also appreciate that a fair bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And then for North Melbourne, of course I had to mention him, my all-Australian ruckman, Tristan Sherry, excelled in the middle, finishing with 34 hitouts with 7 to advantage, and 16 touches, 8 of them effective, 13 contested possessions, 5 clearances, a behind, 7 score involvements, 14 tackles, 20 pressure acts, 4 1%ers, 7 ground ball gets, and 4 spoils. All Australian ruckman, please.
Yeah. Well, as I said, it's definitely the starting point of that engine room. As I said, it was a bit, especially, I mean, I guess we'll talk about Shearsall in a second.
Yes, I will.
Yeah, as I said, I think all of North's midfield went well. It's just a bit hard to see whether it was just the conditions or them still having a problem with connecting with that forward line. And I guess we'll just wait to see that round one.
Yeah,
I
they're
think
not
they have
playing
a
round
zero,
zero. They'll
right?
play round one.
Yeah.
But yeah, because when I was looking through like the stats and stuff for this, like, Jack Darling didn't really perform all that great. Neither did Larky. They both got shut down fairly comprehensively. Like they didn't really do all that much.
Darling
Nick
just
Larky I
committed
think kicked
more
like
of the
1-2,
side.
so like it wasn't the worst.
Yeah.
But
Darling had 4 scoring shots, so we're just on misses.
oh,
So.
well, you know.
Oh no, it's alright. You had 1 goal 3.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, so like they had enough of the ball, they just couldn't convert.
Honestly, I reckon just Eagles were more efficient than you would expect in such conditions. It wasn't an easy game to play.
No.
I'm not
Yeah,
saying that this was
when
a
I took a brief look
law.
at the highlights last night, yeah, that wasn't very positive in terms of those conditions.
It was similar to Tasmania game, except hotter.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Again, as you just mentioned, Harry Sheezel, the young superstar, he shined in the middle because, as far as I'm aware, he played a lot of middle time. The match report says he played middle time. 36 disposals with 32 of them effective. 11 contested possessions, 6 marks, 6 inside 50s, 7 clearances, a goal, 9 score involvements, 11 press strikes, and 10 ground ball gets. With George Wardlaw out with injury for like first couple of weeks of the season, hopefully not too much longer. It's good that Sheezel is getting more midfield time and kind of playing more of Wardlaw's role. And honestly, I kind of hope that they keep both of them in the midfield and don't put Sheezel back off half back. As much as he's good off half back, I think he's better in the middle. I think both of them are really solid in the middle, but we'll see.
Yeah, well, again, it's like it provides a bit of healthy competition for their next 2 in line, which is like Tom Powell and Will Phillips.
Yeah.
He both statistically did all right. I can't really say because again, I didn't watch the whole match, but you know what I mean? It's saying like, okay, well, if you can, work on your stripes, work on your stripes, work on work on your game. You can still get this spot, and we'll put Sheezel in halfback where he can still distribute. But yeah, as I said, if it's the best move, you just put in there. It's as simple as that.
What about just as an idea? What about if they put Sheezel on the wing? I know he's a solid
good in a contest
on baller, yeah, and good in a contest, but he's still got that solid run, carry, and distribution.
I think it'd be a bit of a waste. I think you're more likely to see Powell or someone like that go to the wing, but I guess it's an option.
It just depends on just where if they struggle too much with their transition game rather than their on ball game.
Yeah, well, as I said, last year their wing play was probably one of the worst in the league. So Darcy Tucker had a pretty good showing. He missed a lot of last season, but played pretty well. So yeah, I don't know. I've still got some teething to do. So
yeah, it's still got a long way to go.
See.
And then just as a final highlight, key defender Griffin Logue was a pillar in defense for whatever you could call this game. Finishing with 14 disposals, with 13 of them effective, 5 contested possessions, 6 intercepts, with 3 of them being intercept marks, 7 marks overall, 4 score involvements, 4 1%ers, and 3 spoils.
Yeah, well, here's a player that they could much afford to come back. Yeah, as I said, again, he's only maybe an average above average. Small to tall defender, but when they don't have that much there.
No.
Just having that number back really helps them. Especially takes a bit of pressure off Charlie Comben as well. So,
Yeah, 100%. All right, on to our last game to cover for the AAMI Community Matches, and that is Fremantle and Melbourne. I'm not going to lie to you, 11-24 is not a good look.
Oh, look, I think there's more concerns for Melbourne than just that.
Oh, no, 100%.
Yeah,
but I'm like, how are you that inaccurate?
Better get out in the preseason? I don't know. But yeah, it was pretty much the opposites. Fremantle controlled the game all day, but they really didn't have as much entries. Whereas Melbourne had a lot of the possession, had a lot of the inside 50s, but really couldn't convert. In fact, if this game didn't open up in the second half, this could have been a very low scoring affair by Melbourne. It sort of opened up because it was a very lethargic heat and humidity sort of game in the Mandurah region. They were playing at Peel. Peel. I don't know what the stadium's called, but I call it Peel
The
Stadium.
page says Rushton Park.
Rushton Park. Okay, there you go. Look, as I said, it's weird. Like, while this was a high-scoring game, it wasn't actually that entertaining to watch. There was a lot of good signs for Freo, though. Walters looked to have a rejuvenated start to this year. He looked pretty fit and firing compared to the end of last season, where he looked pretty tired. The Driscoll, he took a while to get into the game. I've forgotten it again. What's his actual first name? Nate. Yeah, so he's put his hand up for selection by having a pretty good back half of the game. Murphy Reed, the first round pick for Freo, he was solid. I don't think he'll be a round one material yet. He'll fight for a spot with Matt Johnson. He played serviceably. A bit more on the back half he lifted, but yeah, it's a bit of a coin flip between those two. He plays as probably what will be a sub. Maybe Michael Walters plays sub, but again, Bolton did well in his debut. I think he did all that he needed to, provided a spark, and you know what? Still played well with Michael Frederick. Bolton played up a fair bit. Frederick played deeper a fair bit, and there was enough synergy there.
That tracks because we when Bolton was with us, he did play a lot more midfield rather than deep forward. So I think that still flows very well into what Freo's plans are with him.
Yeah, so again, 10 disposals for Frederick. It'll be touch and go to see whether that's enough for a full game, but it didn't cause him a problem today. In terms of Melbourne, though, Aiden Johnson, mature ager, he presented solidly, and two debutants, Xavier Lindsay and Harvey Langford, I thought were okay. Really only glimpses, but I thought Langford actually had a few good possessions, and very sharp. I don't think he's putting his name up for round one, but I think kicked a goal, maybe two, and sort of did a few things on the wing as time sort of went on. But yeah, as I said, I think Fremantle, this was very much their MO. Work the ball off halfback. A tiny bit more direct than last year. It took a few less possessions to get to that forward line movement, but yeah, also Melbourne's defense was pretty bad. There was a lot of open players and open space, and really not one of the key defenders really looked that sharp. I know May had a lot of possessions, but in terms of defensive responsibility, he was a bit touch and go. Lost his opponent a few times, and there wasn't much cohesion as well. So yeah, it was just not the best game for Melbourne, even though the scoreline was technically close.
Technically close. 19 points, it's not too bad. That's what, 3 and a bit goals. But yeah, the 11-24 is pretty I wouldn't say pretty damning. It's a little bit damning because again, it was in Mandurah, so warm temperatures.
Well, there wasn't wind. It wasn't. Oh, okay. There was a bit of a breeze. It was like it was one of those goal advantage breezes. Probably like 1.5 to 2 per quarter. It's a lot harder to score at one end.
Yeah, that makes a fair amount of sense. All right. Individual performances. As you mentioned before, Michael Walters, the veteran, he was pretty classy up forward, kicking 3-1 from 10 disposals, 7 of them effective, 3 marks, 5 score involvements, and 10 pressure acts. Defender Corey Wagner stood tall in the back line, finishing with 24 disposals, with 22 of them effective, 6 intercepts, 11 marks, and 8 pressure acts. And that's really good, especially with Alex Pearce still being out. You just need another key pillar down there to stand tall, and Wagner did fairly well, all things considered.
Yeah, he was playing a bit more distribution. But yeah, as I said, still defensive. Again, it's one of those things where it's like a good distributor, but still defensively responsible enough. yeah, I don't know. They played very. I think they rotated a lot, really, in terms of their back. Because again, it was mainly Ryan and Cox, but it was sort of a very mixed role.
No.
It didn't help that Melbourne's forward didn't really show up anyway. So
Yeah, very true. Very true. And then Andy Brayshaw looked as clean as ever in the middle, collecting 22 touches with 12 of them effective, 13 contested possessions, 3 inside 50s, 6 clearances, 4 goal assists, 6 score involvements, 4 tackles, 30 pressure acts, 11 ground ball gets, and 315 metres gained. So, free
yeah,
midfield, looking solid.
yeah, looking solid. I think clearances. They got pretty thrashed up though. I think it was a bit of a belting. Again, it was one of those games with a lot of anomalies like that. But I'll check it out quickly while you run through. Uh, the others and talking about the Melbourne midfield.
Yeah,
One of the people that did do
speaking of
really well.
clearances, Clary is back to his best. Mr. Clayton Oliver, kicking 3-1 from 28 touches, with 22 of them being effective, 13 contested possessions, 9 inside 50s, 11 clearances, 9 score involvements, 19 pressure acts, and 588 meters gained.
Yeah. So the clearances were 27 to 38, 45 to Melbourne, with 11-15 being the centre clearances.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Again, Melbourne did have more scoring shots overall as well. It was 29. Oh, well, not including ones that might have gone out of bounds. I don't think there were any anyway, but 29 to 35 overall. So it was only 6 more, but it's, the clearance rate, inside 50 rate makes that difference.
Yeah, exactly. As in Melbourne, their serve shots were pretty woeful. Might have been a bit closer, but I still think Freo probably would have won. They were letting them go after the third quarter. Again, it was too hot to play for serious quarters.
Yeah, that's the downside to playing in Perth during summer. I think Perth playing in WA during summer.
Yeah, it still would have been 30 roundabouts. Even at the 4:10 time slot it was at in Perth.
Yeah. Anyway,
3:10 actually.
It was 3:10. Yeah, it was slightly earlier. Anyway, defender Jake Bowie looks solid for Melbourne, finishing with 27 disposals, 19 of them effective, 8 contested possessions, 8 intercepts, 6 marks, 2 clearances, 5 score involvements, 6 pressure acts, 2 1%ers, and 492 meters gained. Very solid distribution off that back line, but, didn't really end up the way that they wanted it to up forward.
And then, yeah, it's sort of, I think, yeah, as I said, it was a bit hard because there's nothing much up the field. But I think Bowie was sort of the just better of the bunch sort of deal.
Yeah. And then last, but certainly not least, Captain Max Gawn looks strong as ever in the ruck, as per normal. Getting 46 hitouts with 15 to advantage, and 18 touches, with 11 of them effective, 9 contested possessions, 4 marks, 3 clearances, 10 score involvements, a goal, 6 1%ers, and 4 spoils.
Yeah, and look, I know he was only up against Reedy, who admittedly had a very lackluster game. But yeah, as I said, he just seemed to he seemed to be putting in the effort, dominating the tap outs. And, as I said, it's sort of, he still feels like that spiritual leader of Melbourne, even when they're going bad. Like, he can just provide spark.
Yeah, 100%.
Even in a not so meaningful preseason game. I will give a shout out to someone who had a bit of a down year last year that started out really well. I thought Tom Sparrow played really well.
Yes, I was looking at him to highlight. I thought he had a very solid game.
Yeah, Mr. Ed, their outside movement was fairly well. It was just in the forward line where it fell apart. Honestly, this could have been a game where they could have been scoring like, I don't know, maybe like upwards to 50 points from halfback, but it just wasn't to be.
Yeah. Also, if anyone is curious about Track Watch, Christian Petrarca, of course, he did play and he looked fairly solid.
Yeah.
We thought they might have rested him a little bit more, maybe not give him as many minutes just because of his injuries. But no, he looked pretty good. I think he played out the whole game and looks pretty primed to go.
81%, of course. But, yeah, no, he again, he sort of went at it fairly well. We wasn't pulling out of contests or shying away from anything. I wasn't tackling as hard as he, maybe could. Probably spent a bit of time in the forward line, more than he might have if it was a serious game. But yeah, if you didn't know, you wouldn't know there was something wrong with him last year. So pretty good to see.
Yeah, very, very much so. And, Track is a fan favorite. I'm a big fan of Track. So it's good to see him on the park and
Yeah.
looking, for the most part, like at least, 90% fit, give or take?
Oh, I mean, he might be near 100. As said, it's hard just to tell what was preseason and what was, you know, trying to keep his self up. So, yeah.
All right, now to move on to our quick previews of the round zero games. Thankfully, there's only 4, and we don't have to really go
Oh,
too
I
in
was going to
depth for
say, do you
them.
want to quickly do the injuries
Oh,
from last
yes.
week?
Yes.
Because that will, yeah,
Yeah, go for it.
just let up the PowerPoint when you're ready.
You may as well start
Sorry,
once
just
I bring it up.
bossing you around. Yeah, so you'll be able to see it on the slide, but I'm going to quickly go through these. There will be an injury list. It'll be out. I'm not 100% sure if it's going to be more than the round zero teams, but I thought I'd fill you in with all the updates of new injuries that have happened since last week. It's been a bit. We're starting, of course, unfortunately, a bit close to home for me. Zach Butters, he's got a knee issue. He's gone for surgery. He'll be out until round 4. So they're just cleaning out a bit of junk in his knee. Hayden Young got a hamstring issue. They reckon he'll be back round 2. It'll be roundabouts, but it's definitely missing round 1 according to the Fremantle doctors. Josh Draper in the same training did his hamstring. It was a lot lighter. He might be back for round 1. He's been put as a test. Mark Pittonet did his calf in training. One of Carlton's favourite injuries. He'll be somewhere between rounds 4 and 5 before he comes back. Corey Durden, small forward for Carlton, again, ankle injury. For some reason, he might be back round 3, but somewhere between 3 to 5. Chunguf Gias, he'll be a test for round 0, even if he gets selected at all. That's a hip issue. That's a week-by-week sort of thing. So, but yeah, as I said, test-ish, I would say. Bailey Dale, he's got a quad issue. He'll be tested for round 1. They think he'll return back in time, but they're not too sure. Callum Mills, he has plantar fasciitis, and he's unfortunately torn it. So he's going to miss a few weeks. He'll be back approximately rounds 3 to 4. Nick Cox is a very iffy one. He's got concussion symptoms that won't go away. He's been tested since a training in, I think it was January even.
Yeah, it was
maybe early
fairly
February.
early.
Yeah, so his is a week-by-week case, and it's a bit concerning, but there's nothing too much to be said until he does clear. Max King, as we know, knee, he'll be tested for round 1. Might be a chance to get back in. Latham Vandermeer, again, they'll be testing him, but by numbers, as long as he doesn't produce another positive test. He'll be back for round 1. Same with Brandon Starcevic, although he's a bit more likely to miss round 1 entirely, just due to the way that the dates line up. Bontempelli, he will miss round 0, if that exists.
Yes.
And is a bit iffy for round 1, I should say. Marcus Bontempelli, you've all heard about this. He's got a calf, expected to be back round 5. Huge injury. Errol Goulden, he's done his ankle, and he's looking to be mid to even maybe late season, depending on how he pulls up and tracks. Cooper Sharman, again, TBA, but he will miss at least a few weeks, I think, but doesn't actually have a timeline for his hand. Mitch Owens did his AC joint in maybe shoved into the contest. I have some opinions on that, but it was very unfortunate to see. But they reckon he might be back for round 1, so it's a bit TBA, but test sort of deal. Willie Rioli, another test for his calf. We don't know the severity of it. We're hoping he was just sort of put on ice, but we're not too sure. And to wrap it all up, from yesterday's match, we don't know too much about it, but Jacob Van Rooyen had back spasms, so they put him on ice, but we don't know of the severity as it stands.
It's not looking too good for anyone right now, is it?
No,
Except
no.
for Geelong. Why is it
Bloody
always
Geelong.
Geelong?
Yeah, well, I mean, they had a few last year, but I wouldn't even say that their injuries last year were too bad. So, it's
I mean, yeah,
maybe
their
it's
their only
culture,
big
maybe it's
one was
luck.
like Hawkins, and even then,
Yeah,
it didn't matter too
easy to
much.
replace when you just have random kids
Yeah.
performing like adults. So, yeah.
All right. Now we'll
Anyway,
jump over to our quick
enough
previews
with the sadness.
of
Yeah.
round zero. Starting with Brisbane versus Geelong up at the Gabba. This, as we mentioned at the
The match
start
that
of the
may
episode,
happen.
this could get pushed back to Saturday, or they'll push it back even further and postpone it to when they have their buys and they'll just give them this week off anyway, and we'll only have 3 matches to play. But if that doesn't happen,
Hmm.
who are we picking? Who are we looking at?
I mean, it's hard not to go with Brisbane just for the fact that it's such a putrid game at the Gabba. And I know Brisbane's coughed up a few games at the Gabba, but I don't think early season putrid. I know I'll bring the scores closer together. And Geelong are very good at ground level, but
Mm-hmm.
oh, I don't know.
Yeah, it's a tough.
Again, it also depends on whether this game gets played or not.
Yeah, it's a tough
Um,
call right now.
but yeah, as I said, Brisbane, you're gonna territory's gonna be a lot more important, and Brisbane just have that in their identity.
Mm-hmm.
Geelong, they do move them all forward still, but they do it off a lot less amount of possession. So if Brisbane can control the game, they're just gonna win by weighted numbers. I don't think this is a matchup that sort of suits Geelong, but I mean at the same time, it gives them half a chance, and for an away game at the start of the season, I think it's just something you sort of try your best, but don't read too much into. I'm going to give it narrowly to Geelong, the
To Brisbane.
Lions.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going Brisbane in this regard. I think with the loss of Starcevic, they should be fine defensive wise anyway. Because again, I don't think Starcevic missed too many games last season, and they still look pretty good.
Mm.
So I think I
Yeah, I
think
mean,
Brisbane will be fine defense wise and be able to handle Cameron and Neil and
yeah.
whoever they play up forward. Blanking on
Um,
names, but
Myers,
Henry,
who was the other one you said?
Ollie Henry will be up
Oh, yeah,
there.
Henry, Dempsey.
Yeah, it's a
Stuff like
lethal
that.
forward line, but I think Brisbane's defense will
Shannon
handle
Neal
it.
may or may not play again, depending on how bad or, the weather is.
Yeah,
Whether they play one or two uh big tolls. Again,
again, this
with the loss of Joe Danaher, that's going to be less important in this game.
yes,
I'm not even sure if
Logan
Logan
Morris,
Morris will get a
I
game.
think should
Hipwood might play
play,
defense or
but
something.
yeah, they might rotate
Yeah,
some
it
plays
might
around.
just be.
Anyway, we still don't even know if this
It'll be
game's
a
going
lot
to be played.
of
Anyway,
Yeah.
a game that will be played is Sydney v Hawthorn at the SCG. This should be a much closer game than maybe we initially expect on paper. But we gotta hope that Hawthorn's backline kind of starts to gel a little bit more.
Yeah, I don't know. I got a feeling that Hawthorn might assert dominance. I think Sydney, again, depending on who they get back, I think that outside game, especially with Gordon gone, Hawthorn are a bit stingy with opposition transitions.
Mm.
So, I think you might see a reduction in back half scoring. I know that Sydney were also a good forward half scoring team, but I think it's just if Sydney can get the ball to ground level often enough, I don't think you'll see a big reduction in forward scoring.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I just think Hawthorn might just get the edge. Especially since it is an opening game. You may see a few more muff kicks that see conventional scoring a bit lower. So I'm actually gonna put a bit it would be probably my only risky tip for this week. I think I might actually tip Hawthorn.
Yeah, I am leaning towards Hawthorn. Um, I think Sydney could show some promising signs. It's just I don't know what their forward line is going to really look like and what they're going to be able to produce, especially against the back line like Hawthorn, provided Hawthorn gels a little bit better than they did
Well,
in this previous
Sydney
game.
don't play a very complex forward line structure. You know what I
True,
mean?
very true.
like I do rate McDonald's still. Marty can get going, but you know what I mean. Like, they're very, to put it in slightly better terms, honest to defend. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? Like, but the areas where they are dangerous, again, goal from their midfield group. Hawthorn, they can match up fairly well.
yeah, they
Like,
can.
they're not going to leave players running through the middle. They've got the speed and pace to run out with them. Which is again why I think theory ball. I'll give Hawthorn the slight edge, but I might just be thinking a bit too much.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, it will also depend on like ins and outs and stuff like that too, because of how close this could end up being.
Yeah, it's pretty light ball. Like
Yeah,
maybe 60-40 at most, either way,
yeah,
if
agree.
you're making arguments.
Um, next on the list in this game, I don't know if the cyclone will affect this game, considering Geelong, like the Gold Coast is an hour
They
away from
reckon more
Brisbane, but
rain.
yeah, they'll get more
They,
rain rather than like the big
yeah, this
storm
could be
sort of
a.
side.
I haven't seen one of these in the Gold Coast for a while. Like normally they've had a few greasy games, but this time of the season you can get the torrential game. But yeah, who's that going to favour? Gold Coast or Essendon? Both have forward options, but are leaning towards smaller players. Both, again, well, Gold Coast are very solid at defending, but I think at ground level they'll be a bit more exposed if it's wet. And again, Essendon, they're pretty strong in the middle. Like, I could see Gold Coast maybe struggling in that regard, and by weighted numbers, I could see Essendon coming back. I definitely don't think it's as wide as maybe people might think. I think people are a bit down on Essendon. Fair enough, because they're playing a lot of rookies, but
Yeah.
in this specific matchup, in these specific conditions, I could actually see Essendon maybe pinch it, but I still think at the end of the day, I'm going to be tipping Gold Coast.
Well, currently, as I'm looking at the forecasts for the week ahead, Saturday it's pretty much meant to be rain, heavy rain, kind of all week. And meant to be storms on Friday specifically on the Gold Coast. So yeah, it's going to be probably a very very wet match, and
Yeah.
I'd probably give that edge probably to Gold Coast. It's going to be humid as well. Like it's going to be 26 and heavy rain.
Oh, putrid. Again, one of the downsides of them showcasing Queensland football for opening round is you get two home games in Queensland. Like, I'm
During
not knocking
summer.
it, but you know what I mean? They're not the most watchable games of football
Yeah,
in
and the
summer.
Queensland summer is just horrible. So this is
Yeah.
gonna not be a very pleasant game. Both games, if provided the first one gets played, they're not going to be very pleasant games to watch. I
Yeah.
don't think.
Although saying that, Brisbane Carlton in the opening last year, I'm pretty sure that was Brisbane. Well, it had to
Oh
be.
yeah, it had to
So
be. Yeah, no,
yeah. Sorry, what I meant
that
was
was a
I'm
much
pretty
better
sure that
game.
was round zero. Um, yeah. So that was very entertaining. So who
Yeah,
knows?
that one was much better. And then
Again, no cyclones though.
true. But then our last game for round zero is GWS versus Collingwood, and on paper, after what we saw from GWS last week, I'm just going to give the edge to Collingwood right off the bat.
Yeah. I don't know. I wouldn't read too much of it. Remember, Collingwood looked pretty bad in the first. Oh no, wait, no, they didn't. No, yes, they did. I don't know. They were maybe bad, maybe not bad, but yeah, I don't know.
I
Um,
just think currently Collingwood just look better.
yeah, I don't know. I just wouldn't read too much into the preseason match, but I must admit that defense was concerning.
Yeah, no,
Um,
that I do agree.
yeah,
But
like
I think they would have learned a lot from. Granted, if a team like Richmond was able to kind of open Collingwood up pretty easily, and but just besides the lack of conversion, um, I think Collingwood will learn to be able to tighten up that defense just a little bit more.
yeah. No, I mean GWS
Oh,
was
GWS. Oh yeah, no, that was
in the preseason. That was
that was
putrid.
horrible.
Yeah. So I don't know, but I don't know. I reckon I'll still back in GWS. Just I don't know, like slightly contested, um, grind early season match. It just seems to be GWS's forte.
Yeah,
So I think Collingwood, they much more prefer when games get a bit open, especially when their back half isn't getting exposed enough, when they can win those forward half contests. But, you know, again, if GWS's defense was as bad as that, Collingwood's forward line looks to be lighting up. So, you know, that could be where I could see them winning by like 30 or 40. But otherwise, I reckon GWS by a small margin.
Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. Last on our list of things to cover for this
Oh,
week.
I was going to say, if you're going to
Unless-
change, I reckon we say that to next week.
You sure?
Um,
Oh, actually, yeah,
Just
because
'cause it's gonna be shorter.
it's going to be a shorter
Yeah.
episode. Yeah, you're right. All right. In that case, that will do us for episode 48 of the Coast to Coast AFL podcast. If I think we're both pretty happy with how we kind of rolled through this episode and the way we kind of did all of the breakdowns. We'll go a little bit more in depth on some games, depending on if they're like super close, and we'll go a little less in depth on games that are blowouts, except for maybe like a couple like better highlights here and there. Maybe some sort of other individual performances that stood out a little bit more. Like maybe we'll cover extra players, something like that.
We just plan to change the distribution of what we spend our time on. Like the lighter preseason game that we sort of talked about, that'll be the level you'll be expecting for some of these blowouts. And again, that a bit more complex Essendon and Geelong breakdown, highlighting a few more structures and a bit more meat on the bone sort of thing.
Yeah, pretty much
for the really close ones.
Yeah, exactly right. And then yeah, if we get some good feedback on the way we rolled it out, then we'll definitely keep going with it because I think it works better for the both of us. But until we find that out from everyone in our audience, in our comments, wherever you're listening to this, I'm running out of words to describe what I want to say. We will love you all and leave you all for next week. Again, thank you all so much. I believe I posted the photos that I took from Wednesday night onto the Instagram stories, so I will upload them maybe directly to the podcast social accounts this week, or at least the ones I still have access to, i.e. Instagram, and that's about it. If you want to, I might upload them onto my socials directly as well. If you want to go check those out, they're just down here at the Blaze Ninja on Twitter and Instagram. I'm still streaming 3 nights a week at Blaze Ninja TTV on Twitch, so please go check that out if you're interested. Otherwise, 3 nights a week minimum. Sometimes there's more, sometimes there's less. But otherwise, thank you all so much for listening, hanging out, chilling on YouTube and Spotify. And we look forward to covering, as much as we have our opinions on opening round, we'll look forward to covering opening round next week. Hopefully the Brisbane-Geelong game does actually happen. Hopefully it's a good game. Otherwise, that'll get shoved into the round 3, round 4, whenever they're meant to have their buys.
Honestly, I'm hoping it doesn't happen. I'd rather that game be played later. I don't want to see that.
Honestly, true. Considering the conditions, it would be a much better game.
And it's such a good matchup. I want to see that a bit later, but man, it would be a bit of a bugger for anyone who bought tickets. So we hope if you're in that region, you stay safe. That's what we want the most.
Absolutely. Any of our friends up in Brisbane and along the Sunshine Coast, Central Coast, that sort of region, Gold Coast as well, please be safe from the cyclone if it does get worse.
Have your phones on you for the weekend too. Make sure you check those warnings.
Yes, absolutely. Otherwise, for everyone else around the country, love you all and leave you all. Hope you all have a great week ahead, and we will see you all for episode 49 next week. So until then, catch us later.